Yes, Convener, we have an apology from Councillor Nimmo.
Can folks hear online now? Yeah, I see some note heads. Okay, that's great. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to morning's executive. Full agenda in front of us, so we're going to look to Sean. I've just asked if there's any apology from. Okay, do we have any declarations of interest? None indicated at this time. Okay, we move on to the minute of the executive held on the 11th of April, and the minute is before us. And we agree to the accuracy. Is there anything that's not on the agenda and that's relevant to this required in feedback?
I was wanting in before we go to this stage, just so that you mentioned at the start, the convener regarding the bank holiday. I just would like it noted that the council congratulates the King on his coronation. That was all.
Thank you, Convener. And as usual, the rolling action log is provided for the information of the Executive. It records previous decisions where reports have been called for and gives information if there is any delay in providing that report. The rolling action log appears to be up to date, but it is available for members to ask questions in relation to items on the log. Thank you.
Convener, there's a message that people are struggling to hear you a little bit. If you can maybe move your microphone closer.
I'll do my best.
Hi, it seems to be cutting out. We're getting some words and then it's cutting out.
Okay, we'll try another microphone.
Thank you.
Okay, is that any better now? Okay, that's great. Okay, we're moving on to item 5, which is the Library Services Strategic Plan, and I'll go to Mr Gillespie.
Thank you, Convener. And first I would like to take this opportunity to thank Sally Buchanan and also Louise Graham, who is our Libraries team lead, and her team for the hard work they've carried out daily and towards the work of the Library Services Strategic Plan. As always, I appreciate that members have read the report, so I will provide a summary of the most salient points of the report. Section 1 outlines the purpose of the report, providing the Library Services 5-year strategy plan and proposed changes to the library opening hours. Section 3 highlights areas within the report that impact on our climate change targets. In April 2022, Falkirk Library became part of Falkirk Council and was integrated into Housing and Communities Division. An outlined plan to redesign the service, develop a 5-year strategic plan and deliver 425,000 efficiencies was developed. This was approved by the Council in October 2022 as part of the Integrated Service Review. Since joining Falkirk Council in April 2022, Library Services have procured and implemented a new library management system. Means that we are part of a Scottish consortium of public libraries, paving the way for Falkirk to be part of a One Scotland approach to libraries. We've introduced Press Reader, providing online access to a range of popular magazines and newspaper, and allowing all nationalities to read newspapers from their home countries. Completed extensive engagement to inform our 5-year strategic plan, and also maximised the use of libraries by sharing the reception areas and implementing hot desking within the staff area, sharing between library services, the Advide Hub and access to housing. Following extensive engagement with communities and a focus on trying to reach people who don't use the service, we have developed a strategic plan for Falkirk Library which sets out our direction over the next 5 years. In developing the plan, we've embedded themes of the Falkirk plan as well as Forward, which is Scotland's strategy for public libraries. There are 6 key priorities, which are empowering citizens, quality and inclusion, community wellbeing, reading and learning, culture and heritage, sustainability development and future investment. The appendix within the plan also shows how we are going to measure our successes. As part of our engagement with communities, feedback was provided a range of options that would reduce library opening hours. The opening hours options preferred by those who take part in our engagement was to move to one late opening each week in each branch, maintaining Saturday opening and closing all libraries on a Wednesday. This will reduce opening hours in 7-hour libraries. However, Kilmartin Library, which is not currently open on a Saturday, and again recognising the important role that libraries can play providing places for families to go, we would introduce a Saturday opening in Kilmartin. The closure of the one day offers the opportunity for the building to be used by partners or other communities as well, so if that is deemed to be acceptable. Section 8 of the report provides the extensive consultation that took place with staff and our communities. Section 9 covers a range of areas, and one obviously is a financial, which highlights how we look to provide our efficiencies, and Appendix 2 gives an update on where we are delivering these services. Proposed changes regarding staffing are laid out within Section 9, and how we would support these. We will continue to work closely with staff and their trade unions to achieve this. For members' awareness, we have a statutory duty to provide libraries, as their proposed changes allows us to continue to have 8 public libraries whilst delivering these efficiencies as mentioned before. An equalities and poverty impact assessment was completed for the redesign of the service, including the strategic plan and proposed changes in opening hours. Also, the Fairer Scotland duty was considered during the development of the strategic plan and completion of the impact assessment. In conclusion, this report provides you with an ambitious plan for library service that will support us to deliver against the Falkirk plan, as well as achieving the efficiency targets for the service. I therefore refer members back to Section 2 of the report where the recommendations are laid out. My colleague Sally Buchanan and myself are happy to answer any questions, but as always, the hard questions will go to Sally. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kenny. We're just having some technical problems, so if we can maybe take 5 minutes or so just to get that sorted out. So apologies for that. Okay, it appears that we are now back up and running and everybody's connected. Okay, thank you for that, Kenny, and I'll go to Councillor Bowes to move the report.
Thank you, Convener. The strategic plan for libraries is obviously follows on from the October 22 report approved by Council, with libraries becoming part of the Council itself in April the same year. Last year, we've seen a 68% increase in visits to our libraries, 16% increase in borrowers. However, our libraries have shown that libraries are not only book borrowing, with 1,694 events attended by 26,571 people, proving definitely that libraries are for everyone. Credit to this has to go to the service, but in particular the direct library staff, who I know have been very, very involved in what they've been doing here. I welcome the new library management system, the improved Wi-Fi system and the sharing of facilities. I was recently approached by a friend of my wife who stated that at first that she was furious about the change in the magazine reader because it was the previous one was so good. She had actually looked at going to Edinburgh because she could get the same system in Edinburgh. She reluctantly eventually tried Press Reader, and she states it is just the most amazing system, and she is now actually promoting our libraries, because sometimes when you get change, when you actually try it, it turns out to be an awful lot better, and Press Reader seemingly is the most amazing. You can literally see New York Vogue and then go and see papers from France, from anywhere in the world at any time. It is seemingly a great system. Following extensive consultation, which produced 2,684 responses. This has led to the 6 priorities as laid out by Kenny, which importantly I think states will be measured as well. In opening hours, I'm pleased that we'll retain library services for all of our 8 libraries to serve their communities. Slowmanon will remain the same, Bronnybridge will reduce by 3 hours, and the other 6 will reduce by 9 hours. This reflects closing on Wednesday, which during the consultation it was determined that it was the least busy day. I will say that although they close on Wednesday, the buildings will still be able to be used for public use should people require public meetings. The addition of libraries at Slowmanon on a Saturday, I think, has got to be welcomed to bring them into line with the rest of the libraries. Due to the recruitment freeze over the last year, it is anticipated this will be able to be achieved by deleting vacant posts. As I said, the buildings will be accessible to the public as they go on. This will allow us to maintain library services across our 8 libraries and the communities that they serve. The development of the strategic plan will develop the service to meet the needs of our communities, tackling inequalities and supporting attainment and improving wellbeing. I'm therefore happy to move the recommendations as laid out in section 2. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rice. I'll go to Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Convener. I'm happy to second the report and reserve the right.
Okay, thank you. I'll now open up for any questions or comments in relation to the item. Councillor Spears.
Thank you. Can I ask regarding the library's shared facilities? There has been a great deal of attention paid to the public toilets being opened in Grangemouth Victoria Library. How will this help the people if it's going to be closed on a Wednesday?
Okay, Mr Gillespie.
Convener, yep. As quite early as Councillor Spears says, unfortunately, unless the building is used by other parts of our community, then it will be shut. So unfortunately on the Wednesday within there, the toilet will not be available. But hopefully, as we're aspiring to, that other communities or partners would like to use the building that day.
Can we ask then that the existing public toilets be opened on a Wednesday so that the people can have that facility in the town? Because the opening of the toilets in the library was hailed as Grangemouth gets a public toilet, Grangemouth Town Centre gets a public toilet back. But if it's going to be closed, then it's hardly what was recommended in the first place.
Again, Councillor, I would only reiterate where the library is as with regards to myself, but hopefully that the use of the space on the Wednesday will be taken up by other partner communities and that availability will still be there.
Okay, thank you, Mr Gillespie. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. Appreciate the tremendous amount of work that has gone into this by all the library staff and the officers involved, and also appreciate the extensive consultation that there has been, albeit, as ever is the case, perhaps not as many responses as we would have hoped, but that's not for want of trying, obviously. I want to refer you to point 4.2, the issue about the proportion of public libraries per head of population. Now, you see in this point that we have one of the lowest proportions of public libraries in Scotland. Can we know how far from the bottom are we?
I'm happy to come back to that once we've
Okay.
got more direct information, but we are one of the lowest.
Thank you very much. And in addition to that, if you could also come back with the proportion, the position in terms of library hours, because it's not just about the number of libraries, it's also about accessibility. The number of hours and the number of visits by comparison with other local authorities would be of interest. We're clearly concerned about the reduction in hours. But we appreciate that staff have assured us that the additional activity on the days that the libraries are open will increase footfall. Can I ask when we will get a report back on what the change, the progress in terms of the change?
Before you come in, Mr Glesley, can I ask James and James, put your microphones off? I've got a note of you. It's just so that we don't get the feedback. Thank you.
Yeah. So firstly, in regards to the numbers, the hours and that, and I'm happy to provide at the same time. I appreciate that Sally may have just the hours, but I'd rather pull it together. We would look to come back, depending on obviously the outcome of today's meeting, to start a 6-monthly update in regards to progress. And again, that would be to our goals and valuations on the report that's appended to the plan, and then a year after.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Bundy and Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Convener. It's also on 4.2. I was just wondering, how can other councils afford and operate a higher proportion of public library service, and have we studied that and tried to incorporate that into the strategic plan?
Convener, Sally Buchanan would be best to do.
Okay, Sally. Okay, Sally, morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Yep,
we can
okay.
hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges around some of these statistics is that there's a fair bit of discrepancy or irregularity in how you record them. So whilst other areas may have more libraries, some of those could be very small libraries that at times are perhaps little more than a collection of books in the side of another building, a community centre or somewhere else, whereas others are physical dedicated library buildings such as we have here in Falkirk. So whilst these stats are useful to some extent, I guess it's we need to be careful about just how much emphasis we put on them. Yes, we are one of the lowest, but actually if a lot of those have got a lot of very small libraries, we've got 8 dedicated public library buildings that we really do a lot within those buildings. So I just think we need to be kind of careful on those kind of stats and therefore how far we take them in interpretation. We could work the stats by opening a lot of very small satellite libraries that aren't really manned, aren't really achieving that full purpose and achieving all of what our 8 libraries do. So in terms of value for money, there is work going on just now around trying to firm up the recording, particularly of things like visits to libraries and what counts as a visit. So visits do include visits into our digital stock as well, but that isn't something that Falkirk has historically recorded. We are now recording that, but that's where previously we have shown as quite
very, very helpful, very helpful. But my question is probably leading on for Councillor Spears regarding the Wednesday closing, and we mentioned other groups. How many groups are we talking about? Is it likely to be open, regular, not likely to be open, or is it an ad hoc?
Again, that's something we need to see in the future, Councillor, to see who is interested in using it, what wants to be interested in using it, and for what purpose. And that follows on with other consultations we're doing through strategic property review, different groups and how we can support the groups. The library itself, as you're well aware, is a centre of communities, an excellent facility and building to be used on these days, but it very much will require to slot into how other communities are looking to do that on a Wednesday and their timetable to suit that. But it's an offering as part of that we want to make sure that libraries is still the centre of the communities just in a different way.
Okay, Ken, if they're shutting on a Wednesday, which
I think there needs to be a bit of clarity about the library function is shutting, although the building will be available for community groups to use as meeting space if they want under a booking system. And therefore they can provide someone that will open and close the building accordingly. That's certainly my understanding.
that's what I'm trying to get at.
Sorry, for clarity then, that the building will be available for the communities, but not as a library on the Wednesday. And if we have community groups that want to use it, toddlers, things like that, or any other type of group that want to use it, then it will be available, tying it into a booking system for the Wednesday, but will not be open as a library on that day, but therefore other parts of the community or partners.
Just
Yeah, thanks, convener. Obviously, we won the shuttle libraries here, and conversations we've had previously about maximising the school estate. How have we had conversations about increasing school library opening hours to make sure pupils still have a quiet place to study on Wednesday evenings?
So you can be yep. We have, and we've already started conversation, discussion with our colleagues in education in regards to the library services as well. Bearing in mind that taking on board the consultation that we have concluded, these are one of the quietest days, and there is plenty of provision elsewhere that we can utilise. Again, that will be part of the 5-year plan and how we can maximise the efficiency of the buildings. And again, I'll stress not just about using it for that, but other services as well. Councillor.
Thank you. And I believe the Central Advice and Support Hub in Falkirk Library will still be open on a Wednesday. And I think, sort of leading on from what Councillor Kerr's saying, how will these distinct opening hours and distinct access for people be advertised? Because I've got a slight concern that folk are going to turn up to the library, see no open on a Wednesday and say, well, automatically the hub might not be open and it might not be available for a public space. How are we going to make sure that we sort of push back against that?
Subject to obviously decision today of members, then we will have a full comms briefing on how we'll do that, and that will be through all the usual ways. But again, we've learnt lessons from other communications that we'll do. We will try our best as always. What I will say is though, it's not a guarantee that we'll get everybody, but once we get into a routine in that, word of mouth is usually our best favour. Once we get the comms out in the correct way, and then it's usually word of mouth after that. But we'll make sure that a full comms package is put together and members are aware of that.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to just go to 3.6 of the action plan, which is on delivering antisocial behaviour. And I think instances of antisocial behaviour at our libraries have been highlighted in the last wee while in the local press, and I'm glad to see this part of the report coming forward for the protection of staff. I think the staff who work at our libraries are tremendously dedicated to making sure our libraries stay accessible for every member of the public, and I'm especially glad to see the inclusion of a library charter, including young people. Young people in these situations aren't the problem, they definitely are the solution. So it's possibly a question for Sally. Could I get some idea on how this youth charter will be developed and how young people will have the opportunity to input into the charter? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. I could have answered that, but I'll let you go to Sally.
I thought that was the more difficult one in fairness, Kenny.
Sally.
Okay, Sally.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you very much for that. We have indeed put in place a behavioural charter within Denny Library, which is where we've been having particular issues around antisocial behaviour, but we're looking to roll that out that across the other libraries as well. It has been developed in conjunction with young people, and it sets the behavioural expectations for within our library services. I guess I just want to kind of say that, you know, banning young people is very much a last resort within the service, and it's, you know, at the end of the day, it moves the antisocial behaviour to the entrance of the building, can result in damage out to the outside and abuse to our staff on leaving. We would far rather and always will take the approach of trying to work with partner agencies and with the people themselves to set expectations on how we want people to behave within our libraries, and would only use a ban in extreme circumstances, which is what we have done recently in Denny, and it's been a temporary ban. But at the end of the day, these public buildings are everybody's space and we want them to work for everybody. So we will continue to work with young people, make sure that people are involved in that charter within Denny and within our other areas. We've issued guidance for our staff in terms of their safety. We've reviewed our risk assessments, and we're looking at additional training for our staff around de-escalating issues and helping them to kind of manage those issues going forward.
Thank you very much, Sally. Thanks, Kenny. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, colleagues, can I ask, are we content to accept the report? Okay, thank you. We move on to our next item, which is item 6, which is a tax incremental finance, A9, A904 and Westfield update. And it's Mr. Kettrick that is going to take this report.
Thank you very much, Convener. The purpose of the report is to update members on the progress made to date in delivery of the Tax Increment Finance Programme, commonly known as TIF, and the significant role it has played and will play in supporting economic growth, recovery and renewal going forward. By way of background, Tax Increment Finance Programme commenced in 2013 and has sought to secure private sector investment, support economic growth, support existing and create new jobs and business space for the local economy. This involves the delivery of infrastructure such as roads to unlock development, and these works are funded from borrowing against non-domestic rates secured through the delivery of new business space. The report covers the recent review of the Tax Increment Finance Programme, including its future affordability, and sets out a prioritised approach for project delivery and commitment. This includes proposals to revise the scope of the previously agreed roadworks at Westfield A9, A904. In addition to revising the Westfield roadworks, the report notably seeks approval to remove the previously proposed overbridge, which was intended to be fully funded from levelling up funding from the UK Government. Each of the recommendations within the report align to a specific area, and in summary, Council Executive is asked to note the progress in the delivery of the TIF programme to date, which up from 2013, over £16 million of infrastructure investment has been delivered, which has included works to improve and install signalling at Earlsgate Roundabout, the EV charging hub at Falkirk Stadium, and more recently improvements to M9 Junction 5. Approximately 2,000 jobs have been secured or sustained to date through these enabling works to support the delivery of almost 124,000 square metres of business space. As a consequence of cost increases and changes to technical aspects of non-domestic rating, Council Executive in September 2020 instructed officers to request changes to the TIF agreement with the Scottish Government, including the extending of the borrowing cap from 67 million to 95.7 million. Scottish Government have now agreed to all the changes, and Council Executive is now asked to approve the proposed amendments to the TIF legal agreement. This will enable us to progress all the projects proposed within the report. If approved and recognising the revised financial model and prioritised delivery approach outlined in the report, Scottish Government officials will then progress the required amendments to the agreement through the regulatory process. As outlined throughout the report, officers have undertaken a comprehensive review of the TIF programme and each of the projects to establish its wider affordability. This review was particularly appropriate given the construction inflation being experienced nationally and some economic uncertainty in certain business sectors. The review has involved projecting and appraising construction costs and non-domestic rates required to cover and borrowing. Whilst the TIF is separate to the Council's General Services revenue budget, if there was any shortfall in non-domestic rates income to meet the borrowing, this would be required to be met by the Council. And Section 5.3 of the report outlines the financial position on the programme and concludes that the Phase 1 programme is projected to be affordable under the most pessimistic projection for non-domestic rates income. Using the most optimistic model, all previously identified investments, including Phase 2 commitments, would be enabled with surpluses generated. It is, however, likely that the final position will be somewhere in between, and therefore it is financially prudent and responsible for us to adopt the more cautious approach and prioritise our projects as they are progressed going forward to ensure that proposals remain affordable. The affordability and regular updating of the financial model is therefore a key consideration given the scale of the projects proposed. The largest programme of works are those previously approved at Westfield roadworks, which would increase traffic capacity, improve active travel links and enable the delivery of the Gateway development. In addition to the roadworks, the Westfield project was also subsequently proposed to incorporate a substantial overbridge, which the council was successful in securing levelling up funding for, and this was identified as being able to fully fund the construction. As part of the review, however, the cost of the overbridge was appraised, and it was estimated that the likely cost would possibly exceed £25 million against a maximum levelling up fund contribution of £20 million. It is therefore considered unaffordable, as the additional costs would need to be met from other sources. In light of the bridge no longer potentially being considered affordable, officers have undertaken a review of the TIF programme and engaged the UK Government on revising the project. Following revisions to the scope of the project to ensure that whilst there would be no overbridge, active travel would continue to play a prominent role, and the benefits of this would be incorporated in any revisions. Through engagement with the UK Government, they have confirmed that they are willing to provide levelling up funding of £14.1 million towards those aspects of the project. So, recommendation 3 seeks Council Executive to note that the proposed overbridge is unaffordable. Recommendation 4 notes that agreement has been reached with UK Government to secure support for the proposed revised scheme, and therefore in conjunction with the findings of the wider TIF programme affordability review. Recommendation 5 seeks to progress the revised Westfield scheme without the bridge, as well as the prioritised programme of projects that are outlined in the report. Alistair will share on screen some images of the revised programme at ground level crossing arrangements at Westfield Roundabout and the dualling arrangements proposed. If you could do that, Alistair, that would be great. You can leave them on screen. If the preceding recommendations are proposed, this will allow officers to conclude legal agreements for the Falkirk Gateway development, which was previously considered and agreed by members in October 2021, and recommendation reflects this. This exciting mixed-use development will include big box retail, leisure, housing and a new hotel, and will provide a substantial contribution towards the affordability of the TIF programme through the non-domestic rates that will be generated. Recommendation 7 proposes that the capital receipts from the Falkirk Gateway development will continue to be prioritised for town centre regeneration projects and will be released following confirmation is not required as contingency for the TIF programme. In order to ensure the continued affordability, officers will continue to monitor the financial model and review risks, and in this context it is proposed that whilst contributions for Avon Gorge and Grangemouth Flood Protection Scheme will continue to form a core part of the investment proposals under the TIF programme, they will not be committed to until there is certainty on affordability and funding from partners is secured. Again, this is a prudent approach to adopt. It should be stressed that there remains a strong desire to progress both projects and recognition that TIF support may and probably will have an important role to play in their delivery. Recommendation 8 seeks approval of this position. Members will also be aware that enabling works have already commenced at Westfield, and I'd like to stress that irrespective of whether the overbridge is included or not, these works were required for the scheme that was previously approved back in September 2020. These works, in commencing when they did, avoided the bird nesting season, which if they had not progressed would have meant a delay of a further year, with the consequences of substantial construction inflation being incurred, the potential loss of the levelling up funding due to the delay in committing and completing works. It would have delayed the Gateway development, which could risk the development entirely, impact non-domestic rates income, and obviously the securing of an important capital receipt. The consequences of not progressing these works when they did would have jeopardised the wider TIF programme and negatively impacted the opportunity for supported infrastructure projects. In conclusion, Convener, by undertaking the review and ensuring regular monitoring of the risks associated with income and expenditure associated with the TIF programme, we can ensure that there is continued affordability while still delivering the benefits of the programme, and these exciting infrastructure projects will contribute to the Falkirk economy going forward. The TIF programme has and will continue to be an important contributor and is estimated to support over 400,000 square metres of business space at the end and over 6,000 jobs. The significant positive economic outcomes should not be underestimated and will have continued impacts that will benefit future generations. I'm happy to take any questions, Convener.
Thank you, Mr Kettrick. I'll go to Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Convener. Usually at this point, I say that nearly everything's been covered by the officer, but everything has been covered by the officer there. So I won't repeat much that he said. There was some good and very salient points in there that were made, and he addressed a lot of concerns that have been raised recently as well, which is good. I do think the graphics were a good addition to his presentation there, so I thank him and Alistair for that, because I know the amount of work that both have put into this. I do have a short addendum, Convener. Do you want me to read that out just now?
Yeah, happy for you to do that, Councillor Garner.
Has it been circulated? Is it about to be?
It's about to be circulated, yes.
Okay, no problem. Recognising the significance of the Grangemouth Flood Prevention Scheme and the associated risks which will impact at both at national and local level, officers are asked to bring forward a report to the August Executive, providing members with an update on progress, including feedback from engagement with Grangemouth community. With the initial estimated cost of delivering the Grangemouth Flood Protection Scheme anticipated to be in excess of 450 million, under the current funding model, Falkirk Council's contribution would be unaffordable. As a result, funding would not be sufficient to deliver the project. Therefore, the update report should also outline a campaign strategy to lobby both Scottish and UK governments on an alternative funding model, acknowledging the wider impact to key businesses and therefore the national economy, but also the potential risk to the people and property. With this in mind, I'm happy to move the recommendations within the report, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. I'm happy to second the report, and I'll just make a few remarks. I think we have to remember we're very fortunate to have the TIF. Otherwise, we would not have access to the same levels of investment that could support the economic development and the creation of new businesses locally. The potential to create 6,000 new jobs by 2037 and integrate active travel improvements, coupled with other larger projects such as the growth deal and indeed potentially the Green Freeport, puts the area in a very good position economically to recover from COVID, but indeed contribute not just locally to the economy but nationally. We know that the TIF's already delivers significant benefits and has the further ability to do so, and is on track to evolve with the creation of the new business space and potential for jobs, but also that integrated and active travel that we want to create to help the fluidity and movement throughout our district. Recognising the area has a significant contribution to make to the national economy, we are able to increase the expenditure of the TIF to meet the projected costs, as well as extending the income period for the non-domestic rates, which will finance the borrowing, and government has recognised that. Westfield flyover costs have escalated, as have many building costs. This is not something that is unusual or it's something that is specific to Falkirk, but it made the scheme unaffordable for the funding envelope that was available to us, and therefore by developing an alternative scheme which will still deliver the outcomes that it was intended, particularly around active travel, UK government have recognised this and are still willing to fund the flyover, fund the alternative scheme of the crossings, which I think is quite significant. This will then allow the gateway development to be unlocked, further economic development within the area, recognising that the retail that would be coming from that is not that would relate to the town centre, hotel and housing, which will include affordable housing, creating jobs and homes for people. So that's a significant step forward and one that is welcome. Also recognising that the capital receipt that is to come from the gateway will be ring-fenced to contribute towards the town centres. it does leave a challenge, particularly around funding around Avon Gorge and the Grangemouth Flood Protection Scheme. And Avon Gorge is something that we want to continue to keep on the table in further discussions with our colleagues in West Lothian, Transport Scotland and potentially UK government funding, recognising that our contribution is most likely to come from the TIF. Grangemouth Flood Prevention Scheme is a huge scheme at 450 million, and we know that the funding model is not fortuitous to Falkirk Council because we would not be able to afford that. Therefore, rather than overshadow the positive movement of the TIF and the other works, the addendum will deal with those issues by engaging further with government on that, and members will be appraised of a report which is due in August in relation to that. So I think that's really helpful that we can be able to do that, but recognise that the magnitude of the Grangemouth Flood Protection Scheme is not going to be delivered through the TIF, and we need to look at an alternative, and that will be a further discussion and a further debate for members in August. But we have a very pleasing and positive vision of the TIF and the infrastructure, what it can deliver going forward, and therefore I'm happy to second the report. I'll now open it up for any further comments or discussion. Councillor Spears.
Okay, thank you. I have 4 questions. First is on roads. The non-domestic rates. Can you tell me what improvements are being made to our roads, especially potholes? I see £300,000 are going to be spent in Denny, Falkirk and Camlin for a bike race. This has caused a great deal of consternation amongst the rest of the district, who suffer greatly for the condition and state of our roads at the moment. Can you tell me if that 300,000 is from the non-domestic rates, or as the ratepayers throughout Falkirk Council, will they be paying for this?
Councillor Spears, that's not the subject of this report, and could I ask you to leave that until we come to the UCI report further in the agenda?
2, the levelling up fund, the TIF. So you're saying that TIF and the levelling up fund are more or less the same thing, since the magic roundabout, or whatever people call it, is not going ahead. There has been great concern regarding what some people call environmental vandalism about the trees that have been cut down. Yeah, I know that during the Earls Gates development, there was a great deal of trees cut down, especially in the former Marquis of Zeckland's estate that is now run as an Asda warehouse. Now, these trees have never been replaced anywhere, which I believe they were meant to. I've asked a question previously, but I've not had a response, though I keep getting told we're going to find out. So if we can find out when the TIF money is going to fulfil everything that was meant to. You're already saying it doesn't cover the flood protection, and I'll move on to that in a minute.
Yeah, I think
we make promises.
You've asked your question, Councillor Spears. Can I maybe let officers answer the question?
I thought they wanted to wait to the end.
So
I still have other questions to ask.
In relation to the Westfield development and the trees that have been removed, as it's been widely reported, there'll be over 200 new trees planted as part of those works, together with a 5% improvement in the biodiversity of the area as a consequence of other works that we will do. As advised last week at the briefing, in relation to the land that was the former Zetland area at Asda, that formed part of the first phase of TIF works, I'm happy to go off and investigate what was agreed in relation to compensatory tree planting, and certainly be happy to advise back on that.
That's great, because Grangemouth lost a great deal of its open space there, and so thankful we have the Helix and the Kelpies that are included, I know, in our open space plan. If I can move on to my final question, and it's about that the elephant in the room really is Grangemouth flood protection. We have an addendum here where you want to further consult with the people. We've been consulting with the people for 5 years. The problem is getting worse every year as the level of the Forth estuary rises. Trying to get works done on the existing flood protection that's in Grangemouth can sometimes be somewhat protracted at times, and I find it very frustrating when you're trying to get this emergency work, because if we have a problem with the Grangeburn especially, then we have a flood in Grangemouth. Now I notice for your gateway scheme and everything else, you're going to be concreting further upriver in an area adequately known as the Bog, which is just up from Foul Dubs, another adequately named area, which further exacerbates the flow of water into the River Carn and the Grangeburn, and especially the Almond Pow, which is a small tributary river of the Grangeburn. We have real problems in Grangemouth, and for here we are after 5 years where it's been recognised. The Scottish Government, I believe, has frozen money. We say we have no money. Believe me, there is no greater investment in saving existing jobs and existing businesses in Grangemouth. I would imagine companies like INEOS will be greatly concerned and will want this to move a lot quicker than it's been moving in the past. Thank you.
Councillor Spears, that is the purpose of the addendum, and you will get a response to that when the report comes forward in August, because that is not the main thrust of this report here, but recognising that members do see Grangemouth Flood Protection Scheme as important, and do want to have details and have further discussions around how that can be delivered. That will be the purpose of the report in August.
I must thank you for that, because it's not for the want to try and try to raise it on every occasion I can, and thank you very much for eventually taking it on board. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. Just in reference to item 4.15, I realise that it's earmarked for phase 2, but it is a little disappointing that the much needed Avon Gorge project hasn't been progressed, especially in light of spiralling costs. Do we know when the joint levelling up fund bid will go in with West Lothian, and when we will know the outcome of that?
Mr Keswick.
Convener, we haven't had notification yet from the UK government in relation to when the next round, if there is a new round of levelling up fund coming forward. We do understand there will be, however it will be limited in terms of its scope. If it comes as it did last year, it'll be expected around about June, July time, in which case then a submission would be required during that period, and we would know the outcome of that prior to the end of the calendar year.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, Convener. I welcome the news that the UK government has been flexible and will continue to support development at the Westfield roundabout. I do have a few questions with the report just for clarification. I see in page 85 4.20 talking about the development of retail space in the area. As we've seen with the retail park, there has been a displacement of economic activity from the high street into the retail park. And one of the aims that we do talk about as a council is high street town centre regeneration. So I've just been wondering, has there been any impact or any evaluation of the potential economic impact on the economic activity of the high street by opening further retail space, and will the regeneration fund be done in a sustainable way in terms of sustainable economic activity on the high street? Thank you.
Convener, I understand there was a retail impact assessment done back in 2021 when the report was considered by elected members on the Gateway development. It is very much one focused on big box retail, leisure, business space and mixed use commercial space in the hotel together with the residential. In relation to the receipt that will be generated from the Gateway development or receipts, they are proposed to be invested in town centre regeneration projects, currently unknown at this stage what those projects are, so we're not holding anything up, and those projects will need to be developed in due course.
Thanks, Paul. Would it be possible to get a copy of that assessment, because I wasn't an elected member then, so I've not seen that. I might have missed it in emails if it has been sent.
It would have been the subject to the previous report. The types of retail that's anticipated at the Gateway site are those that would not be attracted to town centre anyway, and therefore wouldn't look to locate in a town centre.
Yeah, thank you, convener. The second question I had was regarding the trees. I understand the reasoning that Paul, you explained, but I think one issue that has been raised to me is about the communication regarding why the trees were cut down when there was the press at the same time of the the ending of the flyover roundabout. So it was about the communication, communicating to people in Falkirk why those trees were cut down. They are going to be replaced as well. So what steps are the council taking to ensure that communication is being put out there so people are understanding?
Mr. Kesha.
Convener, we obviously identified through our communications team and put a press statement out. Interestingly, what was picked up in the media involved the overbridge, which was never actually subject of our communications. We focused in on the roads project. The tree removal is primarily for the roads project, and we highlighted as best as we could the replacement. Unfortunately, as with all things, communication in a world as diverse with the many routes that people get their news, there was issues in terms of how that was interpreted, those words, and it led to speculation and a lack of perhaps understanding as to what was being undertaken. But clearly, you know, we can learn lessons. You know, it was on our website, it was out through the Herald, despite the fact they slightly got the story wrong, but it was mostly correct. And you know, only part being the overbridge, which was considered. Social media clearly was there also. All we can do is kind of put the message out as much as possible, and you know, hope that people actually pick that up rather than what generally happens is a kind of Chinese whispers. You get a cascade, and I know certainly my office dealt with a whole load of inquiries in relation to the works that were undertaken.
Thanks, Paul, for that. Another question that constituents have written me to ask is how much was spent on consultants for the Westfield flyover design?
Convener, I don't have that to hand, but I can certainly provide that.
The final question they'd like me to ask is, how much have costs increased for the project that's now going ahead because the original focus was on the flyover?
Convener, it's difficult to determine because we're looking at a revised, a value engineered scheme as to how that would have compared. But clearly over the past, certainly since the pandemic, at the start of the pandemic, we have seen 10 and 15% increases relatively year on year in construction inflation, and this project would be no different. So clearly you take that over a 3-year period, we could be looking at anywhere between 30 and 45% cost increases cumulatively.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bundy. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, convener. Just 2 or 3 points. One, in recommendation 7, can I just clarify? It does refer to town centre regeneration projects, but the convener, you referred to town centres plural. Can I clarify that it's town centres plural regeneration projects and not simply the Falkirk Town Centre regeneration project?
Convener, there is no recommendation whether it's one town centre or multiple town centres. It's worded in that way to give us flexibility in the future. And once those receipts are secured, and clearly we have affordability confirmed on the TIF programme, it'll be then for elected members to determine how that money is deployed.
Thank you. I fully accept that you don't know whether there's going to be any money to be deployed in the first place. So yes, but it's important that we keep in mind that we have a number of town centres, not just the one, was the point. The second point I wanted to raise was about the trees. And can you, I think it's probably early days yet, but can you give us any kind of idea of the length of time, because we've all had a lot of complaints about the felling of the trees, obviously. Any idea about when it will be that there will be replanting?
Convener, the works at Westfield will take anywhere between 2.5 and 3 years to fully complete, and the tree reinstatement will take place at the end of that period, and that would be 2.5 to 3 years from now. Main works will commence on site in October, September, October this year.
Thank you. And my final question, like Councillor Patterson, I'm concerned that the Avon Gorge does not get forgotten in all of this. It's been another long-standing issue, and I will be asking for a recess for us to consider the addendum just for a couple of minutes, because I'm concerned that the addendum doesn't in any way suggest that we would also be lobbying central and Scottish governments in terms of Avon Gorge funding, because it seems to me that although you've talked about the Levelling Up Fund, you've also talked about the likely scale of the Levelling Up funds, and it doesn't seem likely that those Levelling Up funds will cover the cost, or even excuse me, including the TIF would cover the costs. So I would have liked to see some reference to lobbying both governments regarding funding for Avon Gorge as well.
I think the difficulty is we have made a commitment to looking at going into a partnership agreement with West Lothian around the levelling up, and until we know whether or not there is going to be another round, it would be difficult to agree that strategy until we have that outcome. But you know, obviously it's for you to discuss at that point. But that would be my thoughts, that we would maybe be preempting things at this stage, and as a result may prevent our strategy that we've already got in place from being able to be taken forward.
Thank you. So could we have just a few minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, if we can come back. Okay, Councillor Hannah.
Thank you for that, convener. We have no amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Kerr, you are next.
Yeah, thanks, convener. We're happy with the addendum, but recognising, as I've said, that different committees on the board where the money comes from, if it's for the Scottish Government, UK Government, whatever. Flood prevention is a devolved subject, which was agreed with the Scottish Government and COSLA in 2016. But if we get money off the UK Government for it, I'm over the moon. Outside developments hasn't been great for town centres and high streets, not just in Falkirk, in the fully United Kingdom, and most high streets are struggling because of it. But I take on board what Paul says about the big box developments and they wouldn't fit in the high street. But it's very important that going forward we make sure that we have a vision and a plan for all different town centres and high streets. I've just a couple of questions, convener. With regards to, many people have mentioned the trees. Do we know what kind of trees and age of trees? Because the trees has been planted all over our district. My grandwains will not see them being trees. They'll take that long to grow. So can I just ask that answer?
Paul?
Convener, happy to provide that information unless Alistair Dawson, who's online, can tell us what type of trees they are.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, convener. I don't have to hand the exact details, but there is a mix of trees, native species, and there will be fruit trees, nut trees. There'll be various types of species that provided that all add to and enhance the biodiversity.
Okay, and my final question. I've had this a lot from constituents asking this question with regarding the flyovers. So we aren't going with the big donut ones. Why are we not going with a smaller version? This was asked at several briefings that we had. I just think it'd be right for transparency for people who's listening to understand.
Okay, Paul.
Yes, convener, the identification of the existing or the previously iconic bridge that was proposed was undertaken as part of a review that basically has just been completed. To revert to an alternative bridge design could potentially delay the project for a further year. As a consequence, the costs again would likely increase to probably be comparable, certainly as to what we're facing at the moment. Not necessarily be as much, but would be potentially of that order. And obviously that would risk us being able to deliver and to secure the levelling up funding, because there would be that timing risk. So the at-level crossing was actually what was originally proposed, so therefore it's quicker and it's easier, and it still meets all the active travel requirements that we need, and it is deliverable within the levelling up funding timing. So there's no risk to the £14.1 million that we're able to secure.
Thanks, Paul. Probably just a comment regarding Avon Gorge. As Councillor Patterson and Councillor Hannah says, it's a very, very important development project for Falkirk District, especially for our wards. But as Grangemouth is strategically one of the only ports that's mentioned, the Scottish Government and UK Government, and whether we need to lobby, I'll lobby anybody for to get it done. But I think it's a massive project for the Falkirk district. And when Malcolm spoke previously about trying to get it delivered, it would get a knighthood if we got it delivered for us, for me anyway. I just think it's that important for the area. And I just like to thank everybody who contributed to the report. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. As there's no other indications to speak, are we content to agree the report with the addendum?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Moving on to item 7. Item 7 is our new parks, Muiravenside. Gosh, sorry, I've lost the report. I've lost the agenda. New Parks Farm, Muiravenside Country Park progress update, and it's Michael that's going to take this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Convener. Members, what you have in front of you is a report updating on progress since the park was transferred from the Leisure Trust to the Planning and Green Space team back in April last year. It was recognised that the financial sustainability of the park was at risk. This park was costing the council a significant burden, and measures would have to be taken to look at how can we make this much more financially sustainable. So officers have been working extensively across with various other partners to ensure that we have a sustainable Muiravenside Country Park. This is 170 acres of woodland and parkland close to the border of West Lothian Council. We have 160,000 visitors attend the park on a regular basis throughout the year. This report really outlines a series of steps that officers have taken over the last year. One in particular is looking at putting out an expression of interest for a potential organisation, third party, to look after the new parks farm itself. The closing date for that expression of interest is the 19th of May, so I haven't had further updates on that just now. The officer also looked at reinstating the Country Park Cafe. We've now secured a tenant within the cafe, looking at a soft launch on the 14th of this month. So please all come down and enjoy the cafe with a formal opening later in the month. So that's a really positive contribution we have made to the park. Throughout the report, there's another recommendations in terms of relocations of the vehicle barrier to consider that there are a number of the 160,000 people who visit it, very few actually access to the barrier, which is located very much near the farm itself. So we feel that it would be appropriate and responsible to move the barrier to the first entrance into the park to ensure that those who are contributing to the parking, but also to the upkeep and to maintain the financial sustainability of the farm and all the other activities across the country park itself. Happy to take any questions regarding this report. There's a lot in here, a lot of really positive work. I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank the officers involved, particularly Angus Duncan, Claire, Caitlin, Chris and Donna at the farm, and I think also to recognise the amount of work the rangers and the staff do with our community and supporting the community, particularly around the farm itself. So happy to take any questions regarding this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I'll go to Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you to Michael. Like all other council services, we need to continue to explore ways to maximise the attractions of the country park, whilst at the same time minimising the cost to the public purse. This park came back under the council's control over a year ago, and since then officers have been working hard to improve the park to put it on a more financially sound footing. This report updates members on progress with the soft marketing exercise for New Parks Farm as requested from the October Executive, and seeks approval to delegate responsibility to the Director of Place Services going forward to conclude any lease. The report is also an opportunity to show the good progress that has been made in the last year and importantly seeks approval for a proposal for relocating the vehicle barrier and introducing new fees and charges to further reduce the net costs to Falkirk Council going forward. There is also positive news in the opening of the cafe after several years, as Michael alluded to. I think it is important to highlight that any additional fee income would directly contribute to making the park more financially sustainable, and in my view, £2 is a very reasonable price to pay, not just for car parking, but also a day out at the farm and the many natural attractions the park has to offer. It remains to be seen as to what the outcome will be of the soft marketing exercise for expressions of interest around any potential lease of the farm. However, I would wish to reassure elected members and communities we serve that we would only go down this route if it was both financially prudent to do so and it clearly demonstrated the community and visitor outcomes that the council wishes to see going forward. I very recently visited the park to see for myself what it was like, and I have to make a confession that this was my first, but definitely not my last visit. This is an excellent facility, but one which I feel would benefit from wider publicity around the whole of Falkirk district and indeed neighbouring authorities. I've certainly travelled a lot further and indeed paid a lot more than suggested here for similar facilities. I'd like to thank the planning and green space teams and importantly the Ranger Service and farm staff for all their hard work and great service to both visitors and volunteers, and for the animals to make me welcome the other day as well. I hope they will agree with me that the major effort that has been made at the park with the new staff management and investment is making a real difference. I welcome this report and I'm really pleased to see that the country park will be in a much firmer financial footing over the coming years, and I look forward to visiting the new attractions as well as seeing the visitor numbers and income going from strength to strength. Convener, I happen to support this report to the Executive and its recommendations outlined in section 2.1 of the report.
Thank you, Councillor Garner, and I'm happy to second this report. I've got many memories of, and so have my children. It used to be a fairly regular haunt for us, Muiravenside Country Park, but also when I was a Boys Brigade officer, we would take the younger boys up and into the woods to do some sort of bush type work, etc. So the fact that we are looking to be able to invest, which we have done in the park, and secured some external funding to help us do that, make improvements to the paths. We have a fantastic programme of activities by our rangers, which I'll do all the things that I used to have to do as a Boys Brigade officer, thankfully, and making the park that bit more sustainable and be able to keep that for the future. We have identified partners for the cafe that they're known and tried and trusted with us, having run other events and indeed the Zetland Park coffee cabin. So they are easy for us to work with as we've already partnered with them. We've got the expressions of interest in relation to the new park farm. However, we've still got a bit of way to go on that before we'll be looking to hand that over to any partner, and there'll be a number of conditions that will require to be met. And if those aren't able to be met, then there'll be a further update brought back to members about the future of the farm. But I think officers and the staff have got to be commended in creating this new business model that makes the park potentially much more sustainable, and indeed the marketing of the product that we're now able to market is so much better, and that should be able to help improve the long-term of the park and reduce the subsidy. If this park is able to wash its face financially, then I think that is we've won a watch in that respect from where we were, but it just shows that with a wee bit of foresight, a bit of business planning, then we can turn some of those particular attractions round and make them much more sustainable for our council area, helping to have further attractions for tourism, both locally and for those that wish to travel further apart. But thanks to officers for the work that they've done in this, and I really look forward to seeing Muiravenside grow and flourish and be another feather in their crown. I'll open up for any further questions or comments. Councillor Spears.
Thank you. I must say I welcome this greatly. Having been involved as a portfolio holder in the past regarding the park, it's a great asset to this district. Like many of our parks, they are real assets. I've had inquiries though, however, coming forward to me through Councillor Anne Ritchie and the Friends of Kinneil Park. They would like to know, are the same plans underway for Kinneil, and if not, why is it less deserving? So can I ask, is there any plans coming forward for not just Kinneil but our other parks? We've had great success in Zetland Park, and I wish your brothers every success. They've proven a great asset to Zetland Park, and I'm sure they'll do the same at Muiravenside. But we have other parks. We have a large district, and as was pointed out, it's on the periphery with West Lothian. It's not the most environmentally friendly place to get to because the fuel you've got to use, and a lot of our other parks are central, and they want reassurances the same as Muiravenside. And we represent all parts of the district. I'm sure we'll all be inundated, especially our new convener for climate change, that these parks are secure and will move forward. Thank you.
Okay, Michael, could you remind us of the paper that came in front of the executive recently around the parks master planning and the timetable for that?
Yes, thank you through you, convener. Thank you, Councillor Spears. Certainly, we have a number of strategic parks that are really important to our communities. We have a timetable of master plan upgrades as these master plans come to the end of their natural life. The first plan we are bringing forward later this year is for Callander Park, and we have a Helix strategic plan also coming forward. The following year has been penciled in for Kinneil Park in 20, I think that's 25. I'll maybe check with Richard Broadley just in the time frame. But in October 22, we presented a timetable for the strategic park master plans upgrades and when they were brought forward for consideration. We work with all our strategic parks clearly, and we progress initiatives, programmes, investments as and when budgets become available across all our estates. So we don't have any particular focus. We focus on all our strategic parks and make sure we bring in any resources we can to upgrade and support those parks as we move them forward. But there is a timetable as outlined in October 22 for the master planning upgrades for each of the parks.
Okay, I'll certainly pass on the email I received. I think it's through, don't quote me, the Friends of Kinneil, who are expressing great concerns regarding their park, and I'll certainly pass that on to you. Thank you.
Just to say the timetable was agreed by members just a few months ago, is my recollection. Okay, Councillor Hannah. Oh, sorry.
I think Councillor Patterson was first.
Thanks, Councillor Hannah. Yeah, as many, I'm delighted to see that we're protecting our only country park, and I know that our relief is shared by Falkirk residents. It is heartening to see that we're looking for ways to get this property financially sustainable instead of forcing asset transfer or closure. And I couldn't be happier for the new operators of the cafe, and I'm looking forward to enjoying their hospitality. I do hope that future developments could include public transport links so that we can enable all to access and enjoy this wonderful park, because we really are fortunate to have it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Hannah.
Yes, thank you, convener. Thank you to all the officers as well who have been involved in producing this report, including the Equalities Impact Assessment. I really appreciate that. It's clearly been a lot of work, both for officers present here today and for people who work at the park itself and other officers. There's been a tremendous amount of work, and I'm really happy to see the change in approach and looking at making the best of our really valuable asset here. Like Councillor Spears, I'm concerned to be assured that we will begin to take the same approach to some of the other assets, that we look at the ways in which we can maximise the usage, maximise these valuable local assets that we have, both in parks and in other assets. If we want to achieve climate change improvements, we really need to focus on getting the best out of our local parks. So thank you to all the officers, and more power to your elbows for the future master planning.
Thank you, Councillor Hannah. I have no further indications to speak. Councillor Kerr, no?
I wasn't going to,
don't usually invite, but I was aware
like many other people here, I visit Muiravanside a lot with my grandkids. It's a great asset to the Falkirk area, and with regards to neighbouring local authorities, a lot of people from West Lothian come and visit and use our park. And for being a representative 5 year previous, it was a concern for me that they even spoke about shutting it. But with the new people taking it on, I'm glad that it will be part of Falkirk Council in the future. And I just hope that other people who want to keep their parks step forward and maybe go and speak to the people who's taken Muiravanside on and take some advice, or even the people for the Friends of Zetland Park, speak to them on how they managed to take it forward. Because as everybody's mentioned, all these parks are valuable to every resident. But thanks for letting me in.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Okay, are we content to agree the report? Okay, thank you. Okay, item 8 is the deposit return system update. I'm also aware that there's 2 amendments to this, and I don't know whether we can maybe get those circulated while officers are speaking, and we can then maybe give that as consideration as we go through the meeting, and I'll take guidance from Colin and how we deal technically with those amendments as we go. But I'll go to Michael, yourself. Oh, sorry, Douglas. See, you opposite side, you're confusing me.
Thanks, Convener. So this paper provides members with an update on the National Deposit Return Scheme from the Executive Report, which was presented in December last year. Under Section 2, Recommendations, the report details how Council have mitigated to the recently announced changes with regards to implementation of the DRS by extending the black box service up to the 31st of March next year. The service also commits to review glass recycling points located across the authority, which will include a public consultation exercise to meet the future needs of residents for glass that falls out with the scope of DRS, as well as those members of the public that may have difficulty in accessing reverse vending machines. The last recommendation within the report relates to future contracts and the cessation of the black box service from the 1st of April next year. Now, whilst the black box service will be removed, as the majority of glass is anticipated to be captured within DRS, Council will maintain the provision of a weekly food waste service, as well as a fortnightly absorbent hygiene product collection for families with young children and nappies, as well as hygiene products for adults. Section 4 of the report covers the background to DRS and how DRS is designed to capture targeted drinks containers, as well as the reasons for implementation delay. As you're aware, the First Minister recently announced a new implementation date for DRS to commence from the 1st of March 2024. Section 5 of the paper, Considerations, sets out 2 options available to the Council, the first one being a new contract, replicating the existing service provision, i.e. a fortnightly black box collection with a weekly food and fortnightly AHP collection. Given the level of investment contractors would require to provide such a service, we'd be looking at a 7 to 10 year contract period. However, the report highlights that this option would not offer best value, as with DRS coming in, the glass chambers would largely be empty, resulting in an inefficient service. In effect, the council will be paying for something with very little return. This takes us on to the alternative and recommended option, that black box collections come to an end on the 1st of April next year, whilst maintaining the provision of a weekly food collection and fortnightly AHP uplift for those households that qualify. Council provides a comprehensive network of recycling points across the authority, and we will undertake a public consultation exercise prior to the 1st of March next year to ensure provision, there's provision where there is demand. Though subject to tender evaluation, the service anticipate a saving of circa £300,000 per annum from the recommended option. Communication on the changes to the curbside collection are so important, and whilst there will be a national and multimedia campaign on the build-up to DRS through Zero Waste Scotland, a comprehensive localised campaign will also be rolled out to ensure that every household within the authority is made aware in advance of service change. I draw members' attention to section 7.1 of the report, which highlights that financially, DRS is likely to have a negative impact on income levels due to the loss of glass, aluminium and plastic drinks containers currently collected via the curbside, though, as I've previously stated, this loss should be offset in part through anticipated savings achieved via the recommended collections proposal. Moving on to section 8 of the report, conclusions. Under delegated authority, officers have extended the black box service to its maximum endpoint at 31st of March 2024, and this largely coincides with the updated DRS implementation date of the 1st of March next year. Council will maintain its provision of recycling points across the authority and undergo a public consultation on locations and demand, ensuring sites are as accessible as possible across the authority. And lastly, that maintaining a curbside glass collection service beyond the 31st of March 2024 would be inefficient and does not provide best value, as most of the glass will be diverted through the DRS. The revised food and AHP collection service, as per option 2 above, is projected to help offset the loss of income currently generated from the sale of recyclable drinks containers. And that's a summary of the report, Convener.
Thank you for that, Douglas. Just as we go round, perhaps as people speak, they might want to speak to their amendments, and then we'll look at any comments or any questions on the back of that. But I'll go to Councillor Deacon first to move the report.
Thank you very much, Convener. First, I'd like to thank the officers for presenting this update report to the Executive today. I appreciate the time and efforts in bringing this together. I support the decision taken by the officers today to extend the existing curbside collection contract, which has to come to an end on the 31st of March next year. This report clearly sets out a pragmatic way forward for the Council and takes us a further step towards our aspirations of achieving a circular economy at both a local and national level. DRS is something that will benefit us all, and I look forward to seeing it being implemented, as it will reduce the harmful emissions and help towards a sustainable future, not only for us but the future generations. From living abroad in Finland, I've seen the benefits of such schemes and how communities and individuals use the system, and I'm encouraged that this is moving forward in Scotland. The more we can recycle and stop going to landfill, the better we as Council can benefit the people. While removal of the black box will have a detrimental effect to some residents, it is encouraging to see the resolve of the Council officers to provide suitable alternatives through the comprehensive network of local recycling points throughout the Falkirk Council area. Several factors have impacted on our actions, and it is important to consider these in context. First, the timing of the end of our contract would have already coincided with the introduction of the DRS in August, September of this year. Given the uncertainties surrounding this, officers looked at how we could support the introduction of DRS, and consideration was given to extend the current contract to the end of March next year. However, there have been further developments which have further justified this extension. There are further concerns that Scotland's DRS could be denied exemption from the UK Internal Market Act, which created further uncertainty. As such, the scheme's implementation has been paused until March 2024, which will hopefully allow a resolution to be found to this and other concerns. Lastly, and overall, this extension allows for Falkirk Council to work with those who feel that they may need additional support with recycling. We're monitoring and improving our amenity sites across the Council area. I believe that the recommendations before committee present an accurate summary of the situation, while clearly setting out a pragmatic way forward for the Council. Formally, I would support the recommendation laid out within this paper, and once again would like to thank Douglas and his team for their due diligence and formally move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Deacon. Councillor Bowes.
Can I formally second and reserve the right to come back in, please?
Okay, thank you. If people would like to maybe speak to the background to the amendment, and Elaine, at some point I'll ask you to formally move it, but maybe there's an opportunity for people to ask questions. Yeah.
Can I clarify questions first and then proposal of the amendment?
If you want, it might be simpler if we just maybe move the amendments. I think it's because we've then got to do them one at a time. That then, I think they both add to the debate. Therefore, I think it would be helpful to be able to speak to them and then at an appropriate time formally move them so that they can both be considered at the same time. Otherwise, we're taking them independently.
Well, I'll defer to Councillor Steenbank to move our amendment and Councillor Patterson to second it.
If we're content on that procedure, yeah, so we should have had the opportunity to circulate the amendment at this point yesterday. I think it's probably more accurately described as an addendum, so I apologise. I was just in a bit of a rush to make sure people had foresight of that, so thanks, Convener. We aren't proposing anything in conflict with everything laid out by Douglas there. I'd like to thank him and his team for the work they've put into providing this report, which details actions that must be taken now to react to the news of the new deposit return scheme implementation date. Further thanks for engaging in productive conversations with myself and Falkirk Labour councillors in the run-up to this meeting about how we will be promoting an eventual DRS scheme, our recycling points and our AHP collection service. The consultation proposed will be an opportunity for the people of the council area to engage on the scale and siting of the recycling facilities, and I'd encourage them and look forward to many of them doing so. This council has made decisions and communicated these to the public in anticipation of the deposit return scheme. 8 days after the decision was voted through this committee to end black box collections back in December, the first indication of a formal delay arose as per the report. Constituents have asked about the change to black boxes ever since that decision, and subsequently what the proposed replacement will look like. On elected member and officer side, we've endeavoured to inform them with the best possible information available to us about what this scheme will look like and when it's coming. This delay came without prior notice of publication, and the information from government has now changed twice about what scheme and when it will be getting rolled out. We're not here to debate the value of DRS, though. I join many of Councillor Deacon's comments about what it may eventually look like. I think the purpose of this amendment in its first half is we need better communication, better information and a better approach to coordination from central government when we're making decisions about what waste service best suits the needs of the people of Falkirk. We're simply asking for the portfolio holder of climate change to communicate this message to central government. To the second part of my amendment, this is also about accessibility. As identified in the report, mobility is an equalities concern in this proposed change to waste provision eventually, and the possibility of retailers providing curb collection is identified as a measure that may alleviate this concern. Giving a report back to the elected members on the scrutiny side after DRS implementation will identify how private provision is operating for people and may indicate where there will be need for action by this council for people who may not be as easy to access take-back services. Thank you, Convener.
Okay, thank you. Could I ask maybe if Mr. Garner could maybe comment on particularly the second part of your amendment?
Certainly, Convener, through yourself. Obviously, the deposit return scheme, Councillor Steenbank, as you know, is a national scheme, and it's largely been organised by Circularity Scotland. So we will look to maintain good relations and good communications with Circularity Scotland, identifying exactly where the reverse vending machines are going to be located across the district, and obviously promote that on the council website. But likewise, with regards to potential take-back provision through the Click and Deliver scheme as well. And again, I'm happy to update elected members on that as soon as that information comes available.
Thank you. Is there any other questions in relation to Councillor Steenbank's submission at this stage? Yeah, I would say that in relation to item 4, I know that Councillor Sinclair has already written. He wrote when the first delay had come out around the DRS and the impact of Falkirk Council, particularly because of the juncture that we were at and looking to go out to re-tender. Happy that that information be circulated. I'm not entirely sure that a further letter will ask anything different, or indeed elicit any different a response from government, but I don't think I have a particular issue with that, and I don't see any difficulty in accepting this as an addendum to the actual report, but I'll leave it open at this stage for others to comment. Councillor Hannah?
Sorry, can I have some clarification, please? Because Councillor Patterson has not seconded the amendment yet.
Okay,
Is
do you
that
want to
not
come in?
is that not
There
required?
was no indication that she was coming in, so I was kind of trying to
Following
play
from
for
your
time.
explanation earlier when you said that we should do it at the appropriate juncture after everyone has spoken to their points. But if you're happy for me to do it now,
I'm happy
I
to
shall second and reserve the right.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions in relation to Councillor Steenbank's amendment or an addendum, as I would see it more? No. Councillor Kerr, or sorry, Councillor Spears.
You said you were going to forward information that Councillor Sinclair had already written regarding this. Will we get copies of these letters so we can see the plea that's been put forward before Falkirk Council on our behalf?
We're happy to arrange for those to be circulated, Councillor Spears.
That's super, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bundy, are you wanting to move your amendment, or can I take Councillor Bouse first?
Yeah, it's just following up on that. Councillor Sinclair's letters do talk about communication and communicating with government directly to Lorna Slater MSP. So yes, I think possibly when you see the letters, you might find that to ask the new portfolio holder would seem a bit like, as I think the word is, haranguing somebody for something, and I think that you might withdraw that, and it might be something that has to be done later, but I think just now it might be too much.
No problem with haranguing when it's appropriate.
Yeah.
I'll remember that, convener.
Indeed. Okay. On that, can I ask Councillor Deacon and Councillor Bouse, would you be content with the addendum?
I'm content with the addendum, yeah.
Also content.
Okay, we'll now go to Councillor Bundy and his amendment.
Thank you, convener, and I would have happily supported the Labour amendment as well. The people of Falkirk want us to apply common sense rather than overcomplicate issues. They want to examine what's in front of us and then for us to come up with solutions to either mitigate or take full advantage. And when we're faced with uncertainty because of delays announced by the Scottish Government, they want us to take an approach which is flexible, meaning that we are not at the mercy if delivery is not taken. So within this context of the Scottish Government wanting to introduce a deposit return scheme, but pushing back the date of implementation, I was concerned that the only options in the paper were to end the black box curbside collection in spring next year, or to extend the collection for 7 years. To strike a balance between the delivery of services and getting value for the public pound, and the people of Falkirk deserve better than these two binary options. It is worth reminding the committee that we would not be in this position if the SNP Green government were able to implement a workable deposit return scheme. Rather than Lorna Slater's believing that she knows best from her Edinburgh office, the SNP Green government should have been working with households, businesses, local authorities, industry to create a framework to deliver a workable deposit return scheme on time. Why did it take a change of SNP leader for the government to wake up to the inevitable and announce a delay to the deposit return scheme. All of us in this room support the concept of increasing recycling rates. For glass bottles, however, we already have a successful system of recycling through curbside collection. Without the incentive of 20p offered through the deposit return scheme, ending the black box curbside collection will see recycling rates in Falkirk plummet, which is bad for the environment. But my question for the Scottish Government is this. We already have a system for glass recycling which works, so why are you trying to fix something which isn't broken? The deposit return scheme is something, as I've said, will only work when industry, businesses and households are on side, which is currently not the case in Scotland. One thing that most of the industry is shouting for, and I believe is the direction of travel that we are slowly going into, is for a UK-wide scheme. Yes, make provisions for Scotland for the challenges that we face that the rest of the Scotland or the rest of the UK doesn't face, such as the transporting of glass in the Highlands and Islands. But that doesn't mean that we need to create a system that creates a trade barrier between Scotland and the rest of the UK, by far Scotland's largest export market. And if we are going to a UK-wide scheme, which, as I've said, is something I believe we are going to, then it is important to consider that the UK government's proposed deposit return scheme does not include glass. So how can I vote for the removal of the black box when I believe the direction of travel is the slow implementation of a deposit return scheme which does not include glass? And how can I vote to extend a contract by 7 years when it might be redundant for 6 of those years? That's not a prudent use of the taxpayers' money. That's why the Falkirk Conservatives are proposing a further amendment to this report, which asks officers to bring back a report on the delivery of black box curbside collections if there is a further delay to the deposit return scheme or any changes which sees the removal of glass from this scheme. I'd like to thank Colin, Douglas and Malcolm for the wording of this amendment within procurement rules. And I'd also like to thank Brian, Councillor Deakin, for his work and engagement throughout this process. So I hope that people see the common sense in this amendment, and I hope it achieves the support of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bundy. And while I don't see any difficulty with the amendment, the narrative is somewhat missing some of the challenges that the Scottish Government has faced, particularly around the UK market, internal market, and the lack of decisions, and therefore that has added to the delays in being able to take forward the Scottish scheme. But I'm going to ask Mr Garner, Douglas Garner, sorry, before I get confused between Paul Garner, in relation to the residual glass that is going to be left that isn't included in the TRS, and the likely impact that is going to have.
Thanks, Convener. So glass that falls out with the scope of the deposit return scheme, Convener, will be collected via our network of local recycling points, as well as our 2 household waste recycling centres. So there will still be, with the removal of the black box service, there will still be a recycling option available to our towns and villages and people that live in the rural areas as well for glass recycling.
For those that aren't able to get to a glass recycling point?
So, as detailed within the report, Convener, we're obviously going to undertake a consultation exercise right across the authority, ensuring that there is a recycling point provision available where need is required, and obviously we'll look to seek to engage with members of the public that perhaps are unable to access a major supermarket. So there will be local access available for all.
So that kind of meets the mitigation terms of a quality and impact assessment. Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Bundy, do you have a seconder?
Second the amendment, the right to come back in.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kerr. Okay, I'll go to Councillor Deacon and Councillor Boyce for comment in relation to the amendment.
I personally have no issue with the amendment myself. I think any open transparency coming back to the executive and the people is really good. I think that reporting back to us, and especially if there is any more delays and how the implementation is going, is quite a strong idea, and will show the people we are listening and we are working together and being collaborative and working as a team. So I personally have no issue with the amendment myself.
Councillor Boyce.
A bit like yourself, convener, I don't have a major problem with the amendment. The turning it into a national policy rather than actually talking about a Falkirk policy was slightly disappointing, with only a passing comment on the UK internal market bill, which no matter what we do, may just reject all of Westminster, would just be then interfering in Scotland's democratic rights again. But if we want to go on the political side, that's fine. I would have preferred not to. I'd prefer to talk about Falkirk's DRS system.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hannah, do you want to comment in relation to the amendment?
Thank you, convener. Like yourself, I will have to take issue with some of the narrative that went around it. However, the amendment itself, we would be happy to support, with the simple point that it would now be new point 6 rather than new point 4.
Okay, is there anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Patterson.
Thanks. Just briefly, and I know it can fluctuate depending on external influences, but do we have a general sense of how much it is going to impact on our budget, the changes to the deposit return, given that the black box savings were factored in?
Douglas.
Through yourself, convener, you're absolutely right, Councillor Patterson. It's very difficult to predict the income every year because they do fluctuate significantly, and they really can fluctuate very significantly, often depending on the price of oil. There was a report provided to the council back in 2021 by an external consultant that identified that Falkirk Council would have a loss of income, circa £234,000. Given the price of given the price that we're selling the commodities for at present, it's significantly more. I don't have a figure to hand, but I can certainly give you an updated figure. Happy to do that.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Just to clarify, convener, is these just questions on the amendments, or is it opened up yet?
It's opened up now,
Okay.
but just to confirm that people are content to accept the addendum and the amendment. If there's any other comments or questions, and
Right,
that's fine.
Thanks, convener. I have a couple of questions, and probably I went down to see Barry last week just to introduce myself, and I probably nobody in this room or in Falkirk Council knows more about the DRS system than Barry, and there were things he was telling me that I was unaware of, so I'm glad I went down and spoke to him. I did have concerns regarding the delivery of the system. Like everybody else, I'm glad it's coming in, because anything that improves the environment is important to us. Questions that I'd asked is the small businesses like our villages where people do weekly shopping to the big supermarkets, how will they get the return to their deposit return? I'm sure not all small local shops will have the capacity for storing or the capacity of distributing, because that'll put an extra burden on them. So they were concerns that I had. Also, I don't actually think the supermarkets understand the velocity of what's actually coming. When I worked with Asda, the warehouse area that they have is very, very small. So if we're then including this into their business, it'll be challenging. But I would also, with our amendment, all we were trying to highlight is the communication for the Scottish Government is imperative, so that it allows the council either to deliver or to stop the service before it happens. And all we wanted to allow the director of police services to be able to make that decision, bring a report back, make that decision that allows us, if it doesn't go ahead in the 1st of April, for be able to have the flexibility to take it on until it is. Because if we stopped in the 1st of April, then I think we would have a problem as a council. So probably question is, do we think that the local shops and the supermarkets are ready for this?
Okay,
to anybody?
Thank you, Douglas.
Thanks, Kevin. Through yourself. Councillor Kerr, as you're aware, initially the reverse vending machines will principally be located at the major supermarkets, like you mentioned Asda there. There are other major supermarkets as well that are obviously currently investing in that infrastructure, and if you visit some of them at present, you can see that infrastructure is currently being built. My understanding is that for your smaller retailers, your corner shops, that will come at a later date. So it's a kind of a phased, very much a phased approach. Sorry, I'm trying to think of what your last point was there.
Are the supermarkets and the local
Right, yeah.
retailers
So
ready for it?
yeah, so at present we are actively engaging with the major supermarkets and local stores as well. Predominantly the major supermarkets is there obviously in the first phase, just to identify the state of readiness. And again, as soon as that information is made available to us in the service, then I'm happy to share that with elected members.
Thanks, Douglas. Just following on, if I may, convener, this could be a lucrative business for private enterprise going forward. And I just wouldn't like us as a council to lose out on it, because there's high value product there that we will lose as a council because we are not taking it in. So I just hope that it doesn't affect us too bad. Thanks, Douglas.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Kerr, Councillor Spears.
Yep. In my neck of the woods, we say, meanwhile, back in the real world. We have had a delay here to a system that hasn't been properly set up, and the companies that have to put barcodes on the bottles are not ready, and they're complaining to the Scottish Parliament that will affect the profitability of their business. The local shops are not ready. The supermarkets, some of them may be ready, some of them might not. But as for the return scheme, we're seriously asking all our senior citizens and people to sit there and go through barcodes and then carry all these bottles back to the supermarket where they bought them, right? Will we have special uplifts for people who can't use that weight? Who will put the bottles through the barcode and who will get the return? This is vastly turning into a shambles, and we need to look at it. We can be as idealistic as we want and think this is a great idea and we need to do something. But we already have a great idea. We have bottle banks. We have bins where the bottles are uplifted. As my Conservative colleague says, there's profitability in it. Well, we're getting 100% of that profitability at the moment. And here we're going to give it back to some grandiose scheme that's come out of the Scottish Parliament once again, that's going to affect everybody where they're sitting there every night looking through their bottles. Will the bottles be checked for cleanliness next? They've got to then carry all these bottles back, make sure the barcode's properly presented. As I started this, meanwhile back in the real world, a lot of this isn't going to happen. Thank you.
Well, things I would say is it works very successfully in other parts of the world, that does actually make a significant difference around our climate change agenda. So it's something that we do have to consider. But I'll just go to Mr Garner just to comment around these elderly pensioners, etc., and what people are actually doing at the moment anyway.
Thanks, Convener. Through yourself, so obviously, just picking up on Councillor Spears's point there, obviously the First Minister has made an announcement.
Councillor Spears, the officer's trying to answer your question. The officer's trying to answer your questions.
So the First Minister obviously made an announcement last month in relation to the implementation date of the 1st of March, and that's obviously what we're planning on working towards. Convener, you mentioned there that DRS does work successfully in other countries, and I know that it's particularly common and it works very well in the likes of Scandinavia and mainland Europe. And the fact that there's a financial incentive towards it, I don't see why Scotland would be any different from any of those other high-performing countries. With regards to the more rural areas, highlighted within the report, we have circa 75 recycling points located across the authority at present, and through the consultation I fully anticipate that provision will be enhanced.
Do you think this will increase the amount of fly tipping, which is, I believe, vastly increased since we've brought in the new refuge regulations?
It's not anticipated that it will have any impact on fly tipping whatsoever, and I think you're false in saying that fly tipping has increased directly as a result of the changes in the recycling centres. There's no evidence to support that is the case. Okay, there are no other contributions. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. I'd just like to reiterate a little of what some of my fellow councillors have been saying on this side of the room, particularly relating to the budget, because I'm not sure that we've got enough information here about the impact on the budget in terms of A, the extension of the black box scheme, B, increasing the number of recycling points to ensure that every area, every town and village is covered. B, the loss of income, the loss of income in terms of the income we get from our recyclate. So I'm concerned to have within future information from officers, clear information about the costs and benefits of the different options and what we're trying to do. Also concerned about the potential for reducing the amount of recycling, because I've not yet seen a viable proposal for dealing with the other things that the black box scheme deals with, like batteries, small electrical goods and so on. Because of the concern for older people, for people with disabilities in trying to get to recycling points. So I would like to see more information about all of those things. That said, we're all want to encourage as much recycling as possible, and deposit return scheme is an important thing to promote. I'm not against the principle, but I think the detail needs to be looked at.
Okay, Douglas, are you content to bring back a further update at an appropriate time?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
That's not a problem. Yeah.
Convener, with your indulgence, I know I've asked questions, but a point that I spoke to Douglas prior to the meeting regarding the return points for the bottles. It was always my understanding that the different coloured bottles had to go into different bins. That isn't the case. The case is that it gets done when it gets taken back.
Yeah.
So just to highlight that the people that didn't know it, because I've painfully different brands, different colours. But it's just for transparency for the residents that they all go into the one bin and it gets taken and just done at the other end. So thanks, Convener.
Okay, thanks for highlighting that, because then it makes it a bit easier for people. Okay, Councillor Bowes, I'm taking you as the very, very last speaker because we're actually under a bit of pressure time-wise now.
Very quick question on the recycling points, because I know over the last couple of years we've actually removed a number of them. So I'm assuming by that point that some of these were actually costing us that amount of money, and like James, I just put them all into the one.
For yourself, Convener, yeah, I'm aware that some recycling points have been removed, Councillor Bowes. There are a multitude of reasons for that. It could be the lack of usage, and there's no point in having a recycling point out there if it's not used. And sometimes, unfortunately, some containers have been subject to vandalism as well. So it's obviously been decided on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, as there are no further contributions and amendments, I'll be happy to agree the report as amended.
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, can we have just a 5-minute comfort break? please? I'm just really needing to push on. I'm afraid, because we're kind of up against the afternoon meetings for officers as well as members. Okay, we're at item 9 on our agenda, and it's a UCI cycle event, men's road race, and it's with Douglas Gardner.
Thanks, Convener. This paper advises members of the forthcoming UCI Cycling World Championships, which will be taking place in August this year. Under section 2 of the report, the executive are asked to note the content of the report relating to the Elite Road race passing through the council area on the 6th of August this year. Note the use of funding to support this event, namely additional road surfacing maintenance and associated tasks to deliver the event safely. I agree that officers progress to sign the legal agreement between the UCI and Falkirk Council, committing the council's participation, and lastly, support the hosting of the event and positive promotion of the Falkirk area as part of the communications and public engagement strategy. I would draw members' attention to section 4 of the paper, which provides the background, advising that whilst the championship is being hosted by Glasgow City between the 3rd and the 13th of August, some events are being held out with, including the men's elite road race on Sunday the 6th of August, which is routed through the boundary of Falkirk Council, as detailed under Appendix 1 of this report. Approximately 170 of the world's most elite road cyclists will be participating in an event, and as such will attract global and multimedia attention, as well as spectators from out with the Falkirk area. The event will be moved through the authority through a series of rolling roadblocks facilitated by Police Scotland and the event organiser. Some areas may also be subject to full road closures depending on the level of risk, and this will be communicated by the event organiser as per planning risk assessments. Section 5 of the report advises that whilst the event is being managed by the UCI, to ensure a coordinated approach across departments, an inter-departmental team has been established to include all relevant services across council. As per sections 5.3, 5.4 and 5.5, no external funding for part hosting the event is available, and officers from our road service have carried out joint inspections of the route with the elite route planner for UCI to ascertain costs. 8 sections of the road on the race route had previously been identified for upgrade as part of Falkirk Council's annual capital road resurfacing programme this year, and the joint inspection highlighted 6 additional areas in Bainsford, Carenshaw, Falkirk, Camelin, Bonnybridge and Fankerton, which are in need of remedial action to bring the road up to standard. The remedial works identified are a combination of full carriageway resurfacing, permanent patching and crack sealing. The total cost of these additional works is estimated at approximately £300,000, and officers plan to utilise the Economic Recovery Fund to meet these costs, further improving our road network. Section 5.7 of the report outlines the communication strategy and the close joint working between the UCI and the Council's communications teams, ensuring that our communities are made fully aware of the event, and the authority takes this unique opportunity to promote the area and iconic landmarks and out to potential visitors. In addition to the report presented to the executive today, details of the event on the 6th of August will also be communicated to elected members via a lunch and learn session later this month. In conclusion, the UCI event is a great opportunity for the Council to raise the profile of our area and landmarks. Hosting the event will require funding to go towards additional road surfacing maintenance and associated tasks to deliver the event safely. And the funding has been identified and will help to improve the overall quality of our road network ahead of the race. If elected members are supportive, then officers will progress to sign a legal agreement between the UCI and the Council, committing the Council's participation. And lastly, officers work closely with the UCI to maximise the benefits of hosting the event in every possible way, including the positive promotion of the Falkirk area as part of the communications and public engagement strategy. And that's a summary of the report, Convener.
Thank you, Douglas. I'll go to Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you to Douglas and his team. I know it's going to be a lot of work between now and then, hopefully, for especially David Neely's team. I'd like to thank officers for bringing this report before us. I appreciate the effort of services across the council working together, enabling our authority to play its part in what truly is an international event. As is highlighted within the report, the UCI Cycle Championships attract elite cyclists from around the world. The winner wearing the coveted rainbow jersey and having the title of World Cycling Champion. Previous winners include Mark Cavendish, Greg LeMond, Eddie Merckx and a certain Lance Armstrong. And on the 6th of August, our towns and villages will form part of the route for elite men's cycle race. The riders, 52 of the race route, is within our authority area, will enter over the Kincardine Bridge, up into Falkirk Town Centre via Carden Shore, out through Camelin to Bonnybridge, past Denlin Head into Denny Town Centre, before heading out into the lovely countryside. And it's a hilly section for amateur cyclists, but not for these guys, out past Stonywood, Fancurtain and up towards Carden Bridge. Our council has an almost unique opportunity to promote the area and landmarks to a global audience. Not only will there be visitors on the day, but more importantly, we're looking to create a legacy, both in terms of cycling and green transport along our countryside and cycleways, as well as a tourist destination, building upon our growing hospitality industry and local businesses, benefiting our local economy. Cyclists from all over Europe will come here to challenge themselves in sections of this race, and I'm sure this will encourage many residents of Falkirk and Scotland to get back on that saddle and enjoy the many health and well-being positives gained from cycling. This will put Falkirk and our visit attractions on the tourist map of places to visit and stay. As detailed within the report, the additional funding invested in our road network not only allows us to accommodate an international event, there are direct benefits to our communities who live within the authority. In 8.2 we read that hosting this event will require funding to go towards additional road surface and maintenance and associating tasks to deliver the event safely. This funding has been identified and will help to improve the overall quality of the local road network ahead of schedule. I'm delighted and indeed very excited to recommend this report to today's executive for approval. Convener, if I may, can I just ask one question of one of the officers?
Yes, indeed. Carry on.
Yeah, it's directed towards David Maley here. David, it's my understanding that the works classified as additional are indeed required due to their condition. Although not in this year's programme, they are indeed high on our priority list and most likely to be contained in next year's programme. So, in my opinion, it's not additional, it's more like accelerating the programme a little. Could you give us a bit more on that, please?
Thanks, Councillor. Yes, all of our roads within our capital programme are prioritised as part of our road asset management strategy. Whilst these sections of road didn't make it into this year's programme, due to the road condition, they do rate highly and they would have made it into either next year or the following year's programme. So they're still very high on the list. It was just that this year there was other areas out with this route that demanded higher priority.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. I think it is a great opportunity for us to be part of this event and to be able to showcase Falkirk. And as you've indicated there, Councillor Garner, that it's not a replacement. No roads that were planned for investment this year have fallen out. This is additional investment, therefore accelerating the programme. And while it is being done to help to accommodate the delivery of this event, which is a national event, it will also benefit our local communities as well. So the investment is very well spent in this particular case. Having such an event helps to promote Falkirk. While the elite riders will be riding through our area on that one particular day, they will be here for a period of time. We want people to stay, locate themselves in Falkirk and to be able to explore our various tourist attractions, and therefore we will be promoting our Visit Falkirk as part of the event and sharing that with the UCI in order to encourage people to stay, visit and indeed frequent our local hostelries, restaurants, etc. So there will be an added bonus to the local economy that will quite possibly outweigh the investment of the additional 300,000 that's been put into the roads. Therefore, I think it's something that should be very positively looked upon. And while there may be some little inconvenience on the day, I think that the benefits it will bring will completely overcome that. So I'm more than happy to second this particular report. I've got Councillor Spears and then I've got Councillor Deacon.
Okay. Thank you, Convener. Firstly, I would like to welcome an international event to this area, since it might be one of the very few once the asset realisation in Grangemouth Stadium goes ahead, and we might not have many more international events in the area. Can I ask, the portfolio holder says they'll be crossing the Kincardine Bridge. I believe that's closed and will be for some time for repair. It goes through Carnshore, Falkirk, Camlin and Denny. These elite cyclists. Many of my constituents, who I consider elite as well, have to drive these roads. Many of them complain to me because their cars are damaged because of the potholes. They are greatly concerned and would like to know, what is the timeline here for fixing all the potholes in the district? It's noticeable when you drive through to Stirling that once you leave our area, the potholes disappear because you're in Stirling. The rest of the district want to know the rollout when their area is going to be treated by our roads department to the same standards as elite cyclists are getting in residents in other district areas. Thank you.
Okay, my understanding is that the Kincardine Bridge works will not begin until later in the year, and it will be for a period of a number of years because the level of the works that has to be done. So I don't think the Kincardine Bridge works are going to impact on this particular race. I'll go to Mr Maley to answer the question around the prioritisation and the programming of roadworks within the area.
Thank you, Convener. Just a quick point. It was previously the Kincardine Bridge that the route was going over, but that's now changed, so it's coming over the Kilmannyshire Bridge, so it won't affect the Kincardine Bridge. In terms of our prioritisation, we prioritise the full roads council network as part of our road asset management strategy. So at no point within our prioritisation was the UCI event used to favour or prioritise these particular sections of route. And we've had this robust approach for a number of years, focusing on our Scottish Road Maintenance Condition Survey data, and we prioritise the network accordingly. Previous officers within the council put a bid forward a few years ago to get extra funding because there was not enough money being spent on the full council network, and they were successful in that. We now see early indications that the average network that's required for maintenance within the Falkirk area now is slightly better than the national average, whereas before that funding it was slightly worse than the national average. So on the whole, Falkirk Council's network is now sitting better than the national average, and we continue to prioritise the full council network accordingly.
Thank you, Mr Maley. Councillor Deacon.
Thank you very much, Convener. I turned my mic off so I could cough and not interrupt. I'm quite happy with this. I'm very happy that the UCI are going to be coming through Bonnybridge. I'm looking forward to seeing the road improvements, especially in Bonnybridge. And I welcome them to come and visit Bonnybridge when they're in the area, especially our historic area. I know our Greenhill Historic Society have done amazing work in promoting the benefits, the history of Bonnybridge, so we do have some nice murals in that, and I know the residents will be welcoming, and hopefully they will use our shops as well. Myself, I'm worried about the closures. I know they are going to be short term, but I hope that this will see more usage in the area of our road networks for other events, and I look forward to it. But definitely welcome them to Bonnybridge area myself.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Deacon. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, convener. Obviously, I think we all welcome the event coming to the local area and the encouragement it will have for people to get on their bikes. But just for clarification, can we be assured that the acceleration of this work on these particular roads is not in any way going to delay the work on the rest of the road network in the Falkirk Council area, please?
Yep. Okay. Mr. Garner.
Yeah, I'm happy to give that assurance, convener. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Kerr.
I'll be quick, convener. Like everybody else, great to get a world event to Falkirk. Could I ask, I don't know if it would be David or Douglas, is this going to be an annual event or a one-off?
Douglas.
The World Cycling Championships, Councillor, I understand, I believe they are an annual event, but they're not necessarily held in the same host city. It changes. It changes on an annual basis.
That's a pity.
I think the organisers might say something different.
and my last, my final question is regarding communication. Obviously, we've had races through areas in Falkirk Council previously where the residents have been stopped from going out because of the time these races are. So I think it's important that we communicate to the residents in these areas to say at this time of the day you've only be able to go through that road, and I just think that's important. Thanks, Convener.
Douglas, you just want to briefly say something around the communication strategy on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as detailed within the report, Councillor, that communication is absolutely key, both in promoting the event. Obviously, we want to encourage visitors to Falkirk, but perhaps even more importantly, communicating the impact it's going to have, albeit short term, on our local community. So, working closely with corporate communications, they form part of the interdepartmental working group. Again, it's mentioned in the report, and obviously the communities team as well in their wide range of networks, ensuring that our communities are fully aware of that, council. So, absolutely, communication is key.
Okay, thank you. And on that, are we happy to agree the report?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 10, which is the Battle of Falkirk signage, and that is with Michael McGuinness.
Thank you, convener. At the council meeting on the 1st of March 2023, it was agreed that officers would bring back a report on signage that would raise awareness of and inform and educate people about the Battle of Falkirk in the lead up to the 725th anniversary of the battle. I would direct people to the monument cairn at Callender Park. The purpose of this report is to update members on this proposal. It is likely that the officers have been working extensively with the Friends of John de Graham and the Historic Society to ensure that we deliver interpretation signs. These interpretation signs examples are included in Appendix 1. These interpretation signs will include QR codes because there is a rich source of information online to direct people towards that information. This is very much about encouraging people who are on the high street in Falkirk Town to visit the cairn at Callender Park and to other key elements of the Battle of Falkirk that happened 725 years ago. The signs are of a temporary nature. The signs we will be looking to make them permanent, and we would require in certain cases listed building control consent, and therefore these signs will be temporary, and we want to make sure that we could secure approval today to progress those signs, and with the intention of making them more permanent. However, we didn't want to delay the process because the 22nd of July is fast approaching, and we want to make sure the signs are available in advance of that. And then once we've secured that position, we will then look at a permanent location, which, as I said, may require listed building consent, whether that's at the steeple or Trinity Church itself. Happy to take any questions regarding this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. As has been said, it's following on from the Council's decision in March. This paper seeks to update on the progress made to commission, design and deliver the signage to direct people to the memorial care in Callander Park. And the signage will also raise awareness and inform and educate people about the First Battle of Falkirk in the lead up to the 725th anniversary, which is the 22nd of July. Members will be aware the First Battle of Falkirk took place on 22nd July in 1298. Although the Scottish Army was defeated on that occasion, it was a pivotal moment in the First War of Independence, and so an impact, an important event in Falkirk and in Scotland's history. An aspect of the area's heritage that contributed to this tourism offer as well. Edward I wanted revenge to defeat his army in the previous year in the Battle of Stirling Bridge. Wallace resigned as Guardian to be replaced by Robert the Bruce. And despite his victory at Falkirk, Edward failed to capitalise on this and is soon headed south. The report summarises officers' proposals, which are a mix of interpretive text and directions. There's sufficient existing finger posts, directing signs and maps located along the High Street, which will then now be adapted in time for the anniversary. In addition, 2 permanent interpretation boards will be commissioned to provide the background to and the detail of the battle, as well as directing people to key locations connected to the battle, including John de Graham's grave and the Battle Memorial in Callander Park. Officers have been in contact with the Sir John de Graham Society to make use of their existing promotional materials and logos commissioned as part of the Wallace Trail and to agree the narrative for the 2 permanent interpretation boards. Officers are also exploring other opportunities for interpretation, such as extending Falkirk Town Centre audio tour to the Falkirk Explored app, as well as promoting the interpretation and signage via the Falkirk Leisure and Culture, Visit Falkirk and Town Centre websites and via social media. I welcome the report and thank officers for reducing the Council's consideration today, and I'm pleased that good progress has been made since the decision made by Council to approve this project on the 1st of March, and look forward to seeing the signs in place so that the celebratory event on the 22nd of July, people are more aware of the history and Falkirk's key role in the wars of Scottish independence. I'm happy to move the report. Councillor Bowes.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. I totally agree with you. I think also tying in with the previous report on tourism, I think it's an important thing to do, is to put these signs up. The work that the Society of John de Graham has done over a number of years has been superb in actually lifting Falkirk's profile with regards to William Wallace. I am also pleased that both battles are included in this. The second one, which I think officially we won, but I think the weather was kind of bad that day, and we didn't realise it until the day after. But to actually take the history of Sir John de Graham, Robert the Bruce, William Wallace, and ending up as 2 paragraphs in a Falkirk Council report seems a bit small to fill that in. But yes. I think using technology, I think using QR codes as well to guide people around is important. I think as a modern place to have tourism, I think this is the things we have to do. I think also the thought on taking the tour round as well, the sound tour round, is also I think a very, very good thing to do. It will help the society with the good work they've been doing. It will help Falkirk with tourism, and I see this as a very positive thing to be doing, and I'm happy to second.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rice. Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, Convener. I'm pleased that Councillor Bowes outed himself as a Jacobite as the Battle of Falkirk in 1746 was the Stuarts versus the Hanoverians and not Scotland v England, as has been interpreted by some throughout history. But as Councillor Bowes was hinting at, Falkirk does have a proud history, but for too long, Stirling and Linlithgow, our neighbours, have tried to claim history. They've done a fantastic job at promoting themselves, and I think we could learn from them and tap into the tourism that they have benefited from. Falkirk has played a central role in both Scotland and Britain's history. Do enough people in Falkirk know, for example, that Mary Queen of Scots, Oliver Cromwell, Bonnie Prince Charlie, Queen Victoria, all stayed or visited Callender House? And do enough people know that it was actually in the Kinneil estate that James Watt did the development and invention of the steam engine, critical to the Industrial Revolution? Do enough people in Falkirk know that the Duke of Wellington personally requested the carronade made at the Carron Company Ironworks to use at Britain's victory at the Battle of Waterloo, defeating Napoleon Bonaparte? Do enough people know that in 1951, the Stone of Destiny, central to the coronation on Saturday, was actually hidden in Bonnybridge when Ian Hamilton reclaimed the stone? He hid it in Bonnybridge to hide it away from the authorities. And maybe a sillier one, but also just as equally important, Iron Brew, jointly launched in Falkirk and Glasgow, Scotland's other national drink here in Falkirk. And that's just a glimpse. Could have talked about the Romans, the canal network, the port in Grangemouth. Falkirk will be an example of engineering. Falkirk has a brilliant role in Scotland and Britain's history. And that's why it's important that we celebrate this, and that's why today's motion about the Battle of Falkirk 1298 signage is so important, particularly as we celebrate the 725th anniversary later this year. As you pointed out, Convener, we didn't win the battle, but it was also important because we did learn the lessons, and those lessons were learned, which led to victory at Bannockburn and the signing of the Declaration of Arbroath in 1320. Some people have asked me before, well, you're a unionist, why don't you support England's victory? Well, I'm not English to begin with, that's one factor. But secondly, one of the great things about the Union for me is Scotland's cultural independence, and winning the Wars of Independence was vitally important to maintain that. The Declaration of Arbroath was a very significant moment in Scotland's history, defining the nation and actually very modern political philosophy thought. And that wouldn't have come about without victory at the Scottish Wars of Independence. And that I raise that because regardless if you're a unionist or if you are a separatist, Scotland's history is for all of us. Regardless of how you interpret it, we all of Scots are shaped by Scotland's history, and we should be taking collective pride in it. And that's why we as a council should be taking steps to promote our history. And yes, the commissioning of a sign will not solve the problems that we face today in terms of high street regeneration or improving housing quality or education, but it builds a collective pride which creates the atmosphere, the foundation for us to tackle those issues together as a council. So I'm thankful for Michael and the team for being so quick at bringing this report back from the budget, and I look forward to seeing the signs for the 725th anniversary later this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mundy, and I'm pleased to hear you make some of those comments, because it's not always been the case that people have embraced Falkirk's particular role in history in that respect. And what I would say is the jury's still out on whether that was a real stone or not.
Oh, can I make a very quick point? Before the coronation, I read Ian Hamilton's book on the Stone of Destiny, and he confirms that the one at Arbroath Abbey was the one in Bonnybridge, and that was directly taken back to Westminster Abbey.
Well, I think that there's still some people that feel that it's still hidden away in Bonnybridge somewhere, but yes, the Rollo factory in Bonnybridge is significant in Scotland's history, and not many people know that. Often people think it's myth, but those that were around at the time, including my mother-in-law, I have to say, still swears that was where the true stone was hidden. Okay, Councillor Spears.
Okay, thank you. Very pleased that we're doing more to recognise the First Battle of Falkirk, if Falkirk is the location of the battle. It's widely known that William Wallace's uncle came from Denylon Head, and it's widely speculated that his mother come from Glensborough. The position of the fountain at Victoria Park would indicate the battle was fought half in Grangemouth, half in Falkirk. So my question is, where are you going to locate these signs? Do you have superior knowledge to everybody else where the battle site was? And will we be putting further signage to attract people to the grave of Sir John de Graham, the cairn, and also the new mural that's been painted by a lot of work done by a group I've worked a lot with in the last 10, 15 years, the Society of John de Graham. I think they should be recognised today here. If there hadn't been for COVID, I think the Memorial Day would have turned into a weekend and it would have been the biggest event in Falkirk, and it would happen every year. So I wish them every success, but I would like to know where you think the location of the Battle of Falkirk was and where you're going to put your sign.
Michael, do you
Yep.
want to just briefly, please?
Thank you for that, Councillor. I certainly do not have superior knowledge on the location of the Battle of Falkirk, just to put that on the record. We will work with the John de Graham Society, the Historical Society, to determine the right and proper place for these interpretation boards. The main thrust of this paper today was around a high street within Falkirk to direct people towards the cairn initially, but we'll work with those in better knowledge of this subject matter to determine exactly where we should place the signs once they become permanent.
Okay, Councillor Kerr.
Hey, thanks, Convener. I totally agree with my colleague, Councillor Bundy, regarding the history of Falkirk. And you and I have had several conversations of the opportunity that we've missed as a council, and the highlight of the film regarding William Wallace should have been a catalyst for us to bring something to Falkirk, some kind of centre, whatever, and allow us to bring the history of Falkirk to the area, because some of the things that Councillor Bundy identified, not a lot of people will know that, So getting the education to our younger generation, I think is very important. So a small part of the signs gone up might be the start of something bigger. But thanks for Michael bringing it back so quick, so we can get it up and running for the end of July. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kerr. Okay, are we happy to agree the report? Okay, thank you. I want to move on and hope we can maybe move swiftly through the rest of the agenda, but we move on to item 11 in the Treasury Management, and we have Amanda who's going to take us through this report. Amanda.
Thank you, Convener. So the report presented today will be familiar to many of you. It's the Treasury Management Strategy for 23-24. We prepare this kind of strategy every financial year, and it's considered by Executive before referral to full Council. It's part of the requirements of the Treasury Management Code of Practice, where we have to submit a minimum of 3 reports to Executive and Council, which are the Treasury Management Strategy, the Interim Review, and then the Year-End Outturn Review. However, the timing of these reports can be a little bit confusing, so the next report on Treasury that the Executive will receive will actually be the 22-23 Annual Outturn Report. So I know it can feel sometimes as though you get quite a lot of these reports, but this is the actual strategy that we'll monitor for 23-24. So this strategy effectively collates all the Treasury related activity that members have already approved through the revenue and the capital budgets, and also for this year the service concession arrangements. And section 7 of the report sets out the capital expenditure approved to date by members and the associated borrowing requirement, and that all reflects the reports that you've already heard for HRA and for the General Fund. The strategy itself has a similar structure to the last number of years, and it sets out an economic outlook. It sets out our proposed borrowing strategy, which includes an interest rate forecast, and it also sets out the proposed investment strategy. So as I say, much of the report will be familiar to members, and I'll just pick out a few key points to highlight. So firstly, section 5 of the report highlights changes to the Treasury Management and Prudential Codes which must be implemented for 23-24. And many of those changes relate to commercial properties which have been purchased purely for financial gain. And that doesn't tend to impact on any Scottish local authorities, and it doesn't impact on Falkirk Council. That's more a response to some of the activity that's happened in England and Wales over the last few years. Two other areas of note are the new liability benchmark indicator, which I'll come back to, and the development of environmental, social and governance issues. SIPFA are currently developing guidance in this area, and updates and any necessary changes to our investment approach will be brought back to members for consideration. So the liability benchmark indicator, which starts at paragraph 7.9, is a new requirement, but it is really just a new way of presenting information that members will already have seen. And effectively it compares the Council's underlying need to borrow with the Council's existing loan debt. And so the liability benchmark shows the true need to borrow. And the chart on page 202 of the agenda, which sets out the Council's liability benchmark, demonstrates that the Council will have a rising need to borrow, which hits a peak around about 2028. And as I say, that reflects the capital investment programmes approved to date. A lot of that investment is focused on housing, and so it should be a surprise for members that the borrowing requirement will increase significantly. But what the liability benchmark should do is to help us better anticipate our borrowing requirements and to mitigate things like interest rate risks by planning ahead effectively. So that leads me on to the borrowing strategy, which is set out in section 9 on page 203 of the agenda. And over the last few years, the Council has taken out more short-term borrowing because it's significantly cheaper than long-term options. But the difference between long-term and short-term rates has reduced. However, rates are relatively high. So we're continuing to liaise with our Treasury advisors on what term of borrowing we should undertake. And at the moment, we are continuing to undertake short-term borrowing because we're waiting for rates to stabilise and reduce before we lock into that longer-term borrowing. But those kind of discussions happen on a very regular basis with our Treasury advisors, and our cash flow is updated on a daily basis and monitored on a daily basis. So we do try to plan ahead and get all the advice we can to make sure we're making the best decision. So we've got a forecast for interest rates, which is shown at table 9.9, which is on page 205 of the agenda. And that table shows the average position for the year, but we are anticipating a further increase in Bank of England's base rate later on this week. And potentially we're looking at a peak of either 4 3/4 or 5% for the Bank of England base rate in 2023. And it's anticipated that reductions in the base rate will start during 2024. However, inflation is remaining quite stubbornly high, albeit there's still a forecast of quite a sharp reduction in inflation towards the end of 2023. So obviously those prospects for interest rates directly impact on what rate we have to borrow at. And so we do monitor the projections very carefully. And those projections are then reflected in the financial projection reports that we bring to executive on a regular basis. Page 208 of the agenda provides information on the investment strategy, and members will be aware we've spoken before about taking a prudent approach to investment with the focus on security, liquidity and yield in that order. We are seeing some higher returns and rates on our money market funds, for example, but as we've already covered, our borrowing costs are also increasing at this time. The strategy isn't proposing any significant changes to the investment strategy or to our list of counterparties who are the organisations that we'll deposit money with. We feel that we have a good spread. We feel that we have enough places that we can deposit funds when our funds are high, so we're not proposing any changes for members at this point. And then finally, I would just highlight in section 10.18 that we have held some Treasury management training for members in August 2022, but we are considering the need for further training, particularly around things like the new liability benchmark. But if there were any specific areas that members would like to be covered in training, please just drop me an email and I'm happy to try and accommodate that. So thank you, Convener. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Amanda, for that, and thank you for the reports. That's a very comprehensive and robust report. Treasury management is going to become even more important going forward due to the financial uncertainty of the economy, making it very difficult to plan ahead. Fluctuation of interest rates will impact on our ability to borrow, making short-term borrowing more cost-effective at the moment. And while we've scaled back our capital plans, rising interest rates will have a bearing on the affordability of our capital programme going forward, and therefore it's important that we have the best possible information in order to make informed decisions going forward. So our capital strategy will require to be robust in order to be able to support the investment that's needed. So I'm content, Amanda, that you're doing a sterling job along with the team and keeping the council on track with our Treasury management. It's not the easiest of subjects for people to really understand. It's probably not one that people would gravitate for, but I think that we need to have an understanding around Treasury management, what it's designed to do, and to ensure that the financial sustainability of the council is able to be reached and support our financial strategy going forward. So I thank you for that, Amanda, and I'm happy to move the report. Councillor Bowes.
Can I formally second and reserve the right to come back in, please?
Okay, thank you. I will open it up for any questions for Amanda. You appear to have everybody into silence. Sorry, Councillor Pinner.
I'm not sure that it's so much a question as my heartfelt thanks to Amanda for this excellent report. Every time one of your reports comes before a committee meeting, I thank the stars that you're the one that has to write it and explain it, and I also thank the stars that we've got you to do so clearly, and look forward to further training for members, because that is clearly something that we all need, particularly as I try to get to grips with the new rules. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are we content to agree the report? Thank you. Moving on to item 12, and it's the corporate risk management update. And again, it's back with Amanda.
Thank you. So this report presents an update on the corporate risk register and an update on the risk management improvement plan. This report has already been considered by the audit committee in April this year. I think they gave it quite a good airing. And so prior to the consideration of the report, a risk management training session was held, which was open to all members. And I think that helped to facilitate the discussion on this paper at audit committee. So I will just again touch on some of the more important points raised in the report. So section 5 of the report covers the corporate risk register and shows a summary of the changes that were made to the corporate risk register. And there's a more detailed summary of the Corporate Risk Register in Appendix 1 with further information available through hyperlinks. 4 new risks have been added to the register, and these have all been rated high at this time, and they're summarised at the table in paragraph 5.2. Lead officers for those risks are working on the templates. We've identified, and we'll come on to as part of the Risk Management Improvement Plan, the need for some of the action plans to help mitigate and manage the risks to be a bit smarter and easier to monitor. And so that's one of the focuses of the Corporate Risk Management Group's tasks at the moment, and one of the things that we're asking lead officers to focus on as well. We have removed one risk from the register, which is the early years expansion. So paragraph 5.4 notes that a number of risks continue to be high risk, and some of those are scored as limited assurance, which means that we are not confident that those risks will reduce to medium in the time frame set out, but there are some risks there are many high risks which do have clear mitigation plans, and they are expected to meet their target date for decreasing the risk to medium. Paragraph 5.6 notes the need, as I already mentioned, to ensure that there's measurable action plans in place for each risk. We have taken a report to CMT to discuss this, and also had some discussions with directors to ensure that work is undertaken to put measurable action plans in place, and our risk management coordinator has been liaising with services to try and support them to do that. We do have a risk management improvement plan, and that commentary on that plan is set out from paragraph 5.7, and we have made good progress to date. All of that work feeds into the annual governance statement, and that's included in the annual accounts. So the unaudited annual accounts are scheduled to come to Council in June. They will have an annual governance statement which will refer to this improvement plan, and also any other actions we've identified that we need to take forward. So we have summarised some areas of progress in the bullet list at paragraph 5.8 of the report. And as I've already mentioned, the key issue is the development of those action plans, but some of the other important things that we want to take forward are horizon scanning sessions with officers and members. And we really need to link those sessions to the work that will be undertaken as part of the Refreshed Council Plan and the financial strategy. And what we're trying to do is identify any risks that would stop us from being able to deliver our vision and priorities as we've set out in our council plan. The other thing I would just highlight is that West Lothian have been doing a reciprocal audit on risk for us. They have prepared a draft report. I've not seen that draft report yet, but I understand that it will be coming to me fairly soon. And so obviously any recommendations that come from that work will feature either in our risk management improvement plan or annual governance statement, these kind of documents. And then finally, I would draw the committee's attention to the proposed changes to the reporting timetable for corporate risk management. Those proposals are set out in recommendation 4 on page 225 of the agenda. And so just to summarise, we are planning to continue with quarterly reports to CMT, take an annual corporate risk management update and 6 monthly annual governance statement updates to audit committee, and take 6 monthly reports focusing on the risk register, the risk management improvement plan and service assurance statements to executive. So rather than there just be a direct referral from an audit committee report to executive, there will be separate reports that better align with the roles and responsibilities of each of those bodies as set out in our risk management guidance. And thank you, convener. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Amanda. As has been said, the corporate risk management report has been in front of the audit committee for scrutiny and assurance, and there was a robust discussions there. They've also provided feedback on the presentation of the corporate risk register, and that's been taken on board as well and will be looked at for future iterations. This will also be incorporated into further development sessions, and as you indicated, we're looking at changing the reporting timetable slightly, and allowing a bit more time for the executive to look at what is their particular role. And I think that perhaps a bit of a development session around that, maybe as we come towards that 6 monthly point, might be helpful, and members being able to understand the corporate risk register and their role in overseeing those risks. I'm pleased you've given assurance, and I can see that from the register around the highest risks and the mitigations that are expected to deliver on reducing those risks. But as you've also indicated, that we're in a very volatile financial environment, and those may fluctuate. But also we need to understand what's within our gift and what we are not able to have influence over, and therefore perhaps have to put in further mitigations elsewhere, where we don't have the levers to be able to mitigate some of the risks. Yeah, so I think I'm pleased to see the report come forward. I think people are learning around risk, and the mitigation, and again talking about risk tolerance, because we're in a very different environment than where we were a year ago, where we were 5 years ago, and having to come to terms with perhaps being a wee bit more risk tolerant as opposed to risk averse, and the current financial climate is going to be something that's going to be difficult. But I thank you for the report, Amanda. I'm happy to move the recommendations, including the amended timetable for the reports coming forward. Councillor Deacon.
I would like to formally second the report.
Thank you. Okay, I'll open it up for any questions for Amanda. I've got the feeling you've got that kind of shift just before lunchtime, Amanda. I think maybe the development sessions will maybe solicit a bit more debate and discussion with members, but on that, I'd be happy to agree the report. Thank you. Move on to our final item now, which is the referral from the Corporate Partnership Forum, and I'll go to Mr. Moody.
Thank you, Convener. And this report presents 3 updated policies to the Executive for consideration. They have been to the Corporate Partnership Forum for discussion with trade union colleagues. The changes to each of the policies are outlined in section 5 of the report. I won't go through these in detail, but maybe just to highlight 1 or 2 points. In the driving to work policy, the policy will now align more closely with the Council's transport hierarchy. And you'll recall that you agreed an active travel strategy at the last meeting and our local transport strategy too. In relation to the family leave policy, I think I would highlight the introduction of leave for fostering and kinship care placements as an important new initiative, which aligns with broader council policy in relation to supporting the closer to home initiative. And finally, the new policy on the market supplement policy aims to address, I think, some difficulties which the council has had recruiting in some areas. It's a carefully calibrated policy, I think. It requires evidence before market supplement can be applied, and it is temporary in nature. Those safeguards are necessary, I think, just to preserve the council's equal pay position. In relation to the issue of the agreement of these, they have been agreed by all our trade union colleagues with the exception of the market supplement policy. You'll see referred to in paragraph 6.2 that one of the trade unions had some concerns with it. And I think those are reasonable issues which have been raised, but have all been taken into account, I think, in the preparation of the report. I'm happy, Convener, to attempt to answer any questions, but I'm pleased to say, as you'll see, that Tracy Gillespie joins us on the call too, and she can assist with any of the more detailed issues. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Mr Moody, and welcome, Tracy. So I think it's any hard questions have to go to Tracy on this. I think, again, it's updating our policies, reflecting the changes that have happened over the last few years. I think the family leave policy, I think, is very helpful, considering that we are in a constant cycle of recruiting foster carers, and it opens up opportunities for staff who may well have a family situation where they might be able to accommodate becoming a foster carer. I can understand the anxieties around the market supplement policy. However, recognising that there are some particular areas of our business that we are having difficulties in recruiting for a number of reasons, I think it's right that we have that opportunity to be able to make it Falkirk more attractive to people to want to work with us in those particular areas. I'm thinking very much of social work and health and social care right now, which is particularly pressured. So while I appreciate the concerns, I think we just need to carefully manage that and look at how we can best utilise that as a policy to help fill some of those gaps. I'm content that there has been discussions with the trade unions on all of those, and that their comments have been taken on board, and therefore I'm happy to approve the recommendations contained in the report. Councillor Bowes.
Happy to second you and reserve the right to come back in.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bowes. I'll open up for any other questions for Tracy. Councillor Spears.
Thank you. On page 265, it goes into the pensions policies. It doesn't mention the vast amount of people we have on minimum wages and the poor pensions they can have given a lifetime's work to receive or receive the lack of. I intend to bring this up further at the Pensions Committee, but our trade unions have agreed to these minimum wages and the pensions attached to them. Do we intend to move any further on helping people on a minimum wage?
Mr Moody.
I think on the issue of pensions, Convener, it's important to emphasise that the local government pension scheme, the benefits are fixed by statute. They're not an employer discretion. So all our employees have the opportunity to join the local government pension scheme, and the benefits are not within the gift of the council to either increase or decrease.
Okay, Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. Just want to thank all the officers who've done all the very hard work to produce these reports. But my particular concern is about the paragraph 6.2. I have to say that I share the trade union concern that if we are unable to recruit because of an identified problem about our pay scales, that I can understand the necessity to bring forward a temporary arrangement to do something about that. But I think it's really important that it does not become a long-term approach. If the issue is that our pay scales are not as advantageous as other local authorities, or that they are not advantageous enough to attract the necessary staff, then we do need to have in place a procedure for actually looking at those pay scales for the longer term, rather than simply adding a supplement. And I wonder if Tracy could perhaps say a little more about the nature of the union concerns about this, and about the plans for dealing with it if it were to become a longer term issue.
Tracy, do you want to say a wee bit about that?
Yeah, I think I would accept the points that have been made in respect to the pay structure, and I think that as an organisation we need to continue to review our pay arrangements and pay structure. We have, you may recall that we did do a piece of work to review the grades up to and including the kind of lower end of their pay structure and consolidated the living wage, and the next part of that exercise is to look at the pay structure from grade E and above, and that work is ongoing at the moment, and therefore there will be a report back to members should there be a proposal to change that pay structure. So I would accept the points that were made, and there is a review ongoing.
Thank you.
Okay, are we content to agree the report?
Agreed.
Okay. Thank you, colleagues. That brings us to the end of today's executive. Thank you for your contributions and thank you for your time, and I hope you now be able to grab some lunch before your afternoon sessions. Thank you.